Media, an illusion of choice. Do you know that only 6 corporations own 90% of the American media? The most powerful special interest group in Washington is the media. The media is the gateway of information to the American public, and any politician strives to reach the public through the media. Thus, the media have a great say in which politician is granted a voice. To provide a historical perspective, in 1983, 90% of the American media was controlled by 50 companies. Through a history of mergers and acquisitions, these companies have concentrated their control over what we see, hear, and read. In many cases, these companies control everything, from initial production to final distribution. Now only 6 companies own 90% of our media. Our main source of information and cultural output is coming from these 6 giant conglomerates: Comcast, News Corp, Disney, Viacom, Time Warner, and CBS. Profit maximization is the ultimate goal of every corporation. And if that goal becomes entangled with reporting the truth in the news, what will ultimately win out? What happens when there is no one left to compete with? When one company owns everything in your town, does the people in your town have a voice in their media anymore? Would they hear or watch content that is relevant to their lives? Probably not. The more independent media outlets a community has, the more different viewpoints will be presented on air. And the question that arises, do we really have a choice in our media?
As a public service, TV Free Baltimore provides a digital soapbox for those the mainstream media ignores. The opinions expressed in this live stream are not necessarily those of the owners, management, or underwriters of TV Free Baltimore. Furthermore, TV Free Baltimore streams hyper-local content focusing on politics and entertainment in the Baltimore viewing area.
Streaming live from the Paul and Catherine Ranke Memorial Studio, this is TV Free Baltimore. Support for TV Free Baltimore comes from viewers like you. Become a TV Free Baltimore member by visiting patreon.com/tvfreebaltimore.
Hello, and happy Saturday, or a happy rainy Saturday here in Baltimore. I'm Paul Stefan. I'm the host for tonight's stream. And we hope in future to be streaming every Saturday night with a different host each week for the 4-week rotation. So you'd see me in this spot once a month. Derek Sterling, probably, and a few other people. And part of those few other people, again, I urge you to join the revolution here at TV Free Baltimore, in that we need people both in front of and behind the screen to develop shows, host shows, do engineering, what we can to grow and get the story out there, and all the stories out there that aren't being told by what you just saw in the commercial, by the few media companies that control 90% of the media. We want everybody else's voice to be heard. This is the station for the people. And it should be like, like our founding fathers said, it's for the people and it's by the people. And that's going to be our mission. But we need more people to make that dream come true. And that could be you or one of your friends or coworkers, anybody that wants to jump in here, because there's a lot of shows we want to do. We just need the extra people to get them in here. In fact, I have a young lady who you will see tonight, in fact, who may be joining us soon as a host on one of the Saturdays. She's a film director and she's an actress. And I'll get more into that a little bit later. But first, I think we're going to talk about, as you know, we just recently had the primary elections. And now, to go against our current governor, Larry Hogan, is Ben Jealous, who was formerly of the NAACP. And I assure you, they've seen some ads that have been running. But we also have in here about his idea of health care improvement for Maryland, which will cost $24 billion. That's how much his health care scheme will cost Marylanders every single year. As said by Luke Broadwater in the Baltimore Sun, Maryland would have to levy a 10% payroll tax against every business and charge a $2,800 fee for every man, woman, and child to pay for a new health care system in which doctor bills in the state instead of private insurance companies. This is only the first cost estimate for that one proposal. He has other expensive pie-in-the-sky ideas too. Of course, that means higher taxes usually for all of us, because where is the money going to come from to pay for these seemingly good ideas? Every single Democrat elected to the Maryland General Assembly will have a direct vote and impact on Jellis's expensive proposals. The problem is they want to avoid this fact. This week on WGMD radio, State Senator Jim Mathias said, quote, "I've not read Ben Jellis's resume. I don't quite know what his politics are," end quote. That's quite the politician's answer. And so I think our legislators need to do their homework. Because if by some chance Mr. Jellis wins, and he might, that in January our legislatures have to be ready for what he will be proposing. And we'll pay close attention to this on both sides of the street, because I believe we try to be fair at this station about these and other political issues. And keeping in that vein, Tony Campbell was successful in his bid for the Republican nomination for U.S. Senate here in Maryland. And he will be hosting a general election kickoff party at Libertini's Restaurant in Perry Hall. That's this coming Tuesday, July 24th at 6 p.m. And tonight we will be showing our first interview with Tony Campbell. So he has been a friend here of the station, and we've reached out to him as well, because his is a voice that hadn't been heard. So please pay attention to that show this evening. Make up your own mind whether you would like to try a new senator with Tony Campbell and what he believes in, or another 6 years for Ben Cardin. Also, another young politician who's been here at our station, Melanie Harris, who's running for the House of Delegates here in District 12, is having a breakfast at the Overhills Mansion in Catonsville, Friday the 17th of August at 7:30 a.m. And she'd like to see whoever would love to turn out. I'm sure she'd love to have you there, because she faces an uphill battle against the Democratic ticket in this district. Now, to tell you something else, we just this past week had a great Baltimore singer who is known as a story and singing alchemist. And that's Ellen Cherry. And she was here with Andrew Grimm. And in a few streams down the road, you'll see them singing here in the studio, as well as a very interesting, insightful interview that they did. Ellen has been performing for over 20 years, has decided, even though she came from Texas, to make Baltimore her home, and we're very fortunate to have her here. And she's been honored with many awards. And she sings tomorrow at Artscape. It's probably going to be raining, but she needs to have people out there. She's debuting new material. She's inaugurating a new trio with 2 other people, and Andrew Grimm's group June Star will be there. There'll be a lot of different things going on in their set. And that's tomorrow afternoon at the main stage at Artscape at, I believe, 2:30 p.m. But look out for it to be sure what time, because scheduling changes sometimes depending upon the acts and the weather. Also then, tonight, I want you to know, what you'll be seeing. Our first program will be the young woman I told you about, who's a film director and an actress. Her name is Alexis Baroni, and she was here with her producer of her movie, When I Leave. I think his name is Danny. And we're first going to see her film, which is about 20 minutes long. I think you'll enjoy that. And then the interview with them. So that's sort of us giving you, again, a little variety of programming on our very limited budget. Movies, music, informative and entertaining talk shows, and we hope a lot more. So you see that we're not just a one-note station. Then we will have that first interview we did. It's a rebroadcast of our first interview with Tony Campbell. So again, you can look it over and decide for yourself if what he says speaks to you. Then there will be, on the Paul Stefan Show, Robert Neil Marshall. This man has done many things. He is an actor. He is a lecturer on ocean liners. He has been a producer. He has worked behind the scenes. He's worked with Pat Moran in casting. He's a very gifted, interesting gentleman. And I think you will also really like that interview, because you get to see somebody that, again, that's what our station's about, seeing someone tell their story that nobody's ever heard before. Because we believe that we say that everybody has a story, and we're here to tell it. And then the final little interview we have is we go every year to the Mid-Atlantic Nostalgia Convention. And there was an author there whose name is Gary Berman, who's written a lot of books regarding television. And I think he touches upon, on our brief interview with him, on a book he wrote about the great comic actor Ed Wynn, whose career spanned back from vaudeville to radio to movies to one of the very early variety television shows. And he had his son Keenan Wynn was also a well-known actor, and his grandson Tracy Keenan Wynn was a screenwriter. So that, stay tuned for that too. Don't go to bed too early. And then in between, there will be a lot of interesting, informative commercial spots and little informative films that we've gotten out of various places on the internet that we hope will, again, do what we want to do here, which is to enlighten and to entertain. So, with that, don't want to hold it up any longer. Let's get on with the show. Good night.
Hey there, folks. This is Lenny Rudo from Fish Talk Magazine, and you're watching TV Free Baltimore.
Hello, this is Mary from TV Free Baltimore. I'm here at Turkey Point Marina, and I'm here with Lenny Rudo. He has started a wonderful new magazine called Fish Talk. Would you like to tell some of the passion about why you have started this?
Sure. Well, you know, we anglers in the Mid-Atlantic region, and particularly in the Chesapeake, we care an awful lot about what's going on out there, and unfortunately we've had no publication for years and years, really ever since the recession hit and several went out of business. We've had no publication covering fishing in this area, either in print or on the web. So we started Fish Talk, which is both in print and on the web. We started up in April of last year, so we're now publishing the 15th edition. This is last month. This is our newest right here with a big beautiful black drum on the cover. Boy, I wish I caught him.
What areas are you mainly covering?
So we actually cover from Delaware clear down into Virginia. The Chesapeake Bay is where our heart is. It's where we're based at. But we also do cover the coastal fishing, Delaware, Maryland, Virginia. And we also cover freshwater in all three of those states, as well as D.C. and a little bit in Pennsylvania. It's really all the areas that any anglers living around here might want to go fish.
You keep us updated on the conditions and the amount of fish and other aspects of what's going on with the marina life and everything?
Absolutely. As far as the how-to, where-to information goes, we put it all right here in the magazine. This is your how-to, where-to. Now, of course, there's a time lag between when you prepare a magazine and when you actually print it, and that was always the weakness with fishing reports that appeared in any kind of print publication. So what we do is every week by noon on Friday, we update fishing reports that cover all the different areas that we just talked about. We have different reports for the middle Chesapeake, for the lower Chesapeake, for the Tangier Sound. All these areas, we call a bunch of folks in each different area. We talk to different charter boat captains, we talk to different tackle shops, and we get reports for all these different areas. Every Friday by noon they're updated.
What is your mission?
You know what? It all boils down to helping you catch more, bigger fish. That's what it all comes down to. We have a ton of how to, we have a ton of where to. If you fish in this area, you're going to find the tactics, you're going to find the techniques that you need to know to catch drum like that and speckled trout like that.
What's your contact information?
Well, you can always go to fishtalkmag.com, spelled just like it sounds, fishtalkmag, M-A-G.com, and that'll take you right to the magazine online. From there you can find email. You can email me if you'd like. I'm always happy to get emails from readers. Send us reports, send us your fish pictures. We have an entire section in the magazine of reader photos where readers have sent in different fish pictures of the fish that they've caught. And people love being in print, so you know it's fun.
Where can you get the print?
Well, the print version is available in over 700 locations up and down the Mid-Atlantic region. Pretty much all the tackle shops have it. Lots of marinas have it. It's right here at Turkey Point. They've got it inside at the office. A lot of convenience stores have it. And of course, since we're, talking to fishermen, the liquor stores all have it too.
Oh, that's great. And the bait stores, right?
Absolutely.
And it's free?
It's completely free, yes. Please.
That's great.
Find a print version, take one home with you.
Okay, everybody out there, go out and look for Fish Talk and you'll become a great fisherman. It's Mary from TV Free Baltimore. Thank you so much.
The thrill of the hunt, the call of the chase, the anticipation of the catch, just being with friends, family, enjoying the simplicity in life, and what's important. This is the call the sportsmen and women understands. Come and experience the diversity and the quality that is found only in Maryland. Discover more at fishandhuntmaryland.com.
Vino's Liquors and Bar. When you're looking for something a little bit more sophisticated, a little bit more Saturday night, a little bit more downtown. Vino's Liquors and Bar, located at 3811 Old North Point Road in Dundalk, Maryland.
This is Sam with Restore Computer Repair in Baltimore, Maryland. If you're having any computer problems whatsoever with your Mac or PC, desktop or laptop, we can fix it at a guaranteed lowest price. We're located at 8701 Harford Road in Parkville, Maryland, 21234. You can reach us at 443-725-5050. That's 443-725-5050. We're open Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. to 5:30 p.m., and Saturdays, 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. You can reach us at www.restorecomputerrepair.com.
This is my jump shot.
Trash ball, a neat game. Everybody wins. Let me show you how to play. When you pick up some trash, pretend it's a ball, and then you throw it in the bucket, you're playing a trash ball. A jump shot hook, you gotta put it away. We're gonna play that trash ball every day.
Come on, Baltimore, play ball and keep it clean.
We hope you're enjoying your visit here this evening. Now, on with the show.
Hello, this is Paul Stefan, and this is another edition of TV Free Baltimore's Movie Reviews. And tonight we have two guests with us. We have filmmaker Alexis Baroni and producer Daniel Brennan. And I want to welcome you both here tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And what we want to do, because we're going to show your movie, Alexis and Daniel, When I Leave.
When do you leave?
In March.
Are you gonna see combat?
No. But I'm not making any promises. Mom, I'll be fine.
When are you telling Kara?
She was there, actually, when I found out.
Oh. Patrick?
I wasn't gonna tell him.
Jordan?
What? I don't owe him any explanation. We're not together anymore.
So he finds out from someone else that you're gonna be overseas for 6 months or longer even? And
Mom.
you didn't tell him? That'll crush him.
And?
Jordan. It's not fair.
I'll be right back.
Is it nerves?
I don't really know, Mom.
You can always talk to me about anything.
Thank you. I gotta run.
Okay.
Jord? What are you gonna do?
I don't know, Kara.
Do I have to keep it? I hate to say it, but you've been wanting to get out of this town for years.
It's a baby.
You have to think about you, too. Okay, so what happens if you get an abortion?
Well, if I got one soon, I could still go with my unit as long as I cleared medical. I don't know. I'm just worried about what my unit's gonna think of me. I mean, I need to tell my CO soon. But I don't want to go in without having made a clear decision. I gotta go soon. I'm meeting Patrick.
Really?
Yeah. My mom convinced me it was a good idea to tell him about my assignment.
What about... I mean, it is his, right?
Kara!
What? I'm just asking. I mean, you guys only broke up like a month ago.
6 weeks.
6 weeks, whatever. I just wasn't sure if you had, you know, moved on.
No! Just no.
So you guys did it?
Yeah, we did it.
Do you want me to come with you?
No. Thanks. Gotta do this on my own.
Hey.
Hi.
I was a little surprised when I got your text.
Yeah, well, here I am.
Have you eaten?
No, I'm not hungry. Actually, I would love a cup of tea.
Sure thing.
Thanks.
Hey, can we have some tea, Joey? Thanks.
So you're giving orders now, huh?
Yeah, I got a grant to start my own place, so I guess I should start telling people what to do.
That's awesome. Before you know it, you'll be opening your own restaurant.
Yeah, it's exciting. Enough about me. How are you?
Good. Pretty good. Thank you.
Thanks. I'm really happy that we can still be friends, Jordan. And I mean that. What's going on?
I wanted to check out your new job, the new place of your new job.
Jordan, we broke up a month ago. And you said all of this stuff about needing time away from me so that you can figure yourself out. Now you're texting me, showing up here, and acting like everything's okay, which we both know is not true. So what's going on?
First thing, I'm being deployed. Yay.
Are you going into a combat zone?
No, not exactly. I mean, when you first...
I'm just asking. But it could happen though, right?
Right, but it's not likely. So don't worry, okay?
Okay. So what's this other thing?
You know what? It's nothing. I'll take care of it.
You always do this.
What?
Clam up. Not saying what you mean, and it must be important if you brought it up.
I told you it's fine. I'll handle it.
Have you talked to Kara about whatever this mysterious problem is? Yeah. Hey, do me a favor, will you? Don't try and talk to me, because we both know that you won't.
Patrick!
You gotta clean up.
Patrick.
What are you still doing here?
I'm pregnant.
Oh my god. And it's mine?
Yes. Jesus.
Okay. Okay. I'm gonna be a father. Holy shit, I'm gonna be a father. But you're being deployed. What does that mean?
Well, I couldn't be deployed. Not yet. I'd have to wait.
That's great, right? We can get back together and raise the kid. You can't seriously be thinking about having an abortion.
I should explore my options.
Explore your options?
Yes.
What? It's a baby. Why would you
Because I want to leave! I joined the Marines after college so that I could travel, so that I could do something meaningful, that make a difference, all of that. My first assignment was here, at the base in my hometown, where I've lived my entire life. I need to go. I want to go.
What about us?
What us? The only us is this. We've been trying to make this work for a couple years, Patrick. We fight all of the time. We're fighting right now. Do you really think a kid is gonna fix that?
There's other options.
No. It could go into a foster home. I don't want that.
Then there's open adoption.
No.
You can see it whenever we could see it. Whenever. You don't have to give it up without the possibility of having a good life. Then give it to me. I get it. I get it. But I'll take this child, our child, off of your hands so that you can go shoot guns and see the Eiffel Tower.
That is not fair. This is my job.
It's fair to kill a kid so you can live your life?
I took an oath!
It's a selfish oath.
I need some space.
Jordan. Jordan, I'm sorry. Jordan.
How can I do this?
Do what?
Decide. I need to make a decision. I need to tell my officers and I need to make a decision.
Jordan.
Jordan, look at me. Why did you join the military?
Make a difference in my life.
Well, isn't your choice clear?
Can I really justify this?
Technically, yes. Yes, you can. You have the right to do whatever you want with your body and damn whatever anyone else thinks. But what you might think of yourself, I don't know. You know,
What?
I almost had you aborted. Your father begged me not to. He said he'd take care of you. I didn't have to stay here and raise a baby if I didn't want to. He went on and on about flesh and blood and a good conscience, all that stuff. But then there was one thing he said that made me change my mind. He said, Aggie, meeting you was the biggest adventure of my life. Don't you want to go on this one with me too? I never regretted having you. You have been the greatest adventure I have ever known.
Jordan!
Patrick?
Jordan, come on!
I'll wait in here.
Jordan! Jordan, come on. I know you're there. Your car's outside. Jordan! I don't know if you're there or if you're listening. I just need to tell you that Shit. I know we're over. I was a boy when you needed a man, but I still think about you all the time. Like I'm running at a moment's notice. I mean, I already have. I know things don't seem like they're going your way right now, You've had a lot on your plate with the deployment and your career and stuff, and then all the tables turned. I told you what I think last night. And I stand by that, but I also stand by whatever you do. Whatever decision you make, I'll support it. I still love you.
Thank you. But I still haven't made a decision.
Are you leaning one way or the other?
I thought everything would be so different. Join the military, travel, get married, have kids. Not get pregnant by somebody I'm not even with and blow everything up.
You have your mom, you have your best friend, you have me, you have your unit, you have yourself. You're better strengths than other people, and you're stronger than most. I mean, come on, you're a Marine. I can't do that shit. You have a good head on your shoulders. You need to start trusting yourself.
Welcome home. Oh, so good to see you. Oh, I missed you so much.
How was Australia?
Amazing.
Australia?
Oh my gosh, I have so many stories to tell you guys. Hi, sweetie. How are you? You've gotten so big. Look at your blonde hair. I missed you. I promise I won't go away for a little while, okay? I love you. Mommy, come look. Coming. Hi.
And so we want to start with talking about that project, which we know that was in the Maryland International Film Festival this year. Has it been in any other fests yet, or?
As of right now, we are still waiting to hear back from a lot of festivals.
Okay.
We, at least as far as I'm aware, it's probably going to be a couple of years at least. You know,
on the circuit.
In the circuit, yeah.
Okay, got it. Okay.
As long as we can.
Okay, sure, why not? Now, the first question would be, with this movie, where did the idea come from?
Sure. So, the idea came from, I was at work one day, and it was just kind of like, I was thinking about life a lot. I was in my junior year of college, and I was like, you know, what am I gonna do, you know, when I get out of here? Am I still gonna be a filmmaker? Do I want to do something else with this? Do I want to, you know, consider doing filmmaking through another aspect of my life? And at the time I was actually considering joining the military, because When I Leave is about women in the military. So it does have aspects of that. And I have always, you know, really appreciated everything that people in the military do for us. So I thought to myself, I was like, well, why not, make a film about people in the military based on experiences that, women I know have gone through. So that's kind of where the story came from. I started writing one day, and the original script clocked in at about 24 pages, and we had to cut it down really quickly, so to make it work for a lot of festivals. So.
It went for one of my other questions. Say, was it meant to be a feature initially, or something, or a little longer?
No,
just a longer short film.
Just a longer short film.
But it was cut to roughly 20 minutes running time.
I think 20 on the dot at some point.
Very close, I think.
There was at one point, it was 20 minutes and 2 seconds, and so everyone at the investor screening was always giving me crap for it, because they're like, oh, it needs to be 20 minutes exactly. You keep saying it needs to be 20 minutes exactly, and I was like, I know.
It's kind of fun to shave 2 seconds.
Shave 2 seconds somewhere. Yeah. Oh, it was awful. Like, those 2 seconds just gave me such a heart attack at first.
So I guess you kind of answered what I was going to say then, why this particular subject, but meaning, what the young woman goes through.
Absolutely. I mean, just women in film, it's such a big movement right now, big topic, and I'm very pleased to be a part of it. I'm obviously a woman. I am very proud to be a filmmaker and a storyteller, and I wrote my character to be strong, and I wanted her to be someone that young women could look up to in a way, that they could say, cool, like, she's obviously independent, she makes her own decisions, and, at the same time, part of her arc is that she goes through some tough decision making, and some of that strong exterior that I feel like as women we have to put on in, day-to-day life, starts to deteriorate. Because sometimes, and I think this is just true for people in general, is, we put on faces, we put on fronts, in some cases we always think we're super strong and we're super, independent and we can take care of ourselves. It doesn't matter who you are, what gender you are, your race, creed, religion. And, that was what I wanted to show, is that sometimes things happen in your life and you just utterly feel hopeless and distressed and lost and confused, and I hope that comes through in this story, is that you see this strong woman, Jordan, who is independent, and she has to make some big decisions in her life that ultimately kind of define who she is and ultimately define where she goes, from that point that we meet her. So.
Did you identify with that character at all?
In regards to the transitory pieces of my life, yes.
Okay, that's what I mean, as far as being this person has to, these different, transitions and decisions that she has to make.
Definitely in regards to transitions, yes. Most of the situation I don't identify with personally, but it is, I've had people very, very, very close to me go through very similar experiences. So it's a very, the film is ultimately it's about abortion and, figuring out, am I going to have this child? Am I going to let my life be dictated by something, that I wasn't expecting, literally? And then, making the decisions from there.
Right, and I think, one of the things I saw, because subtext, maybe it's just because I know about you, it also seemed to be about a woman who appeared to be from a small town, and she wanted to escape that small town.
Very much so.
And I've known some other people who live in small towns who wanted to do the same thing, or had that same feeling. Did you ever have the feeling that you wanted to escape Hagerstown?
Not Hagerstown, no. Okay. I thoroughly love where I come from.
Okay.
For me, it was more saying, I can do something with my life, and I make the decisions, and even though I come from a small town, a lot of people, especially in the film industry, would say doesn't exist. I can still make something that is meaningful, something that is impactful, and I can be at the helm of this project. So I did want to show a little bit of that in it. I wanted to show that this woman comes from a small town and she's felt trapped and she's felt, constrained by ideas, and she wants to travel and she wants to explore. She, in my opinion, she doesn't harbor any hatred towards it. She doesn't harbor any ill will, but she's just like, I'm ready to go.
Right.
And that I completely understand that. I'm ready to travel, I'm ready to explore, so.
Right. Because I was going to say, that's a feeling of, wanting to leave, to live, be yourself, Get away from your environment so that you can be an adult and be your own person for the first time, as opposed to, you're always somebody's kid, or you're that girl that sang at Christmas time, or you're, Miss Maryland homecoming queen. 5 years later, they still bring that up. That
it's true. I mean, it's part of it's part of my history. Yeah, it happened.
So I mean, it's sort of living with that. Now, the actors. Who were the actors? I mean, sort of, where did you get them? And,
sure. Actually, do you want to talk a little bit about?
Yeah, all right. Well,
sure.
Daniel, get us in.
So all the
get you in
actors
here.
we got them through databases, through Alexis's friends, and all of her SAG buddies, especially people who worked in her acting club. I believe that is acting club.
Actors Club, yeah.
Actors Club. We knew one of them. I've worked with Erin before. I thought was great. She's a great actress. She had a small bit part in another film I've worked on. It was great working with her again, despite the fact that she does have a very busy schedule and it's very hard to work around with her. Understandably so. We had to defer payment because this was a student film and she was working on House of Cards.
Oh, there you go.
One pays a bit more than us.
Just a little bit. Just a little bit more than us at this current moment.
I gotcha. Because I thought they were all good, and the actress was the mom. She was awfully good too.
Sasha, Christine, and Erin I met them through Actors Club. And we met the guy who plays Patrick, Matthew. He just came and he saw the casting call somewhere on Facebook, and he came in and just wowed us.
He knocked it out of the park.
Yeah, he knocked it out of the park. And the thing was, in the casting sessions, I definitely, especially because I'm an actor, I am an actress, and I have been on that side of the table so much that I was like, I'm doing this my way. I want to have a lot of fun with it. So anytime I could even sense a little bit of nervousness, I didn't. I wasn't going through a formal casting director or casting agency. It's like, cool. I was like, let's get rid of this nervousness and let's have the best performance possible. So, I mean, there were some auditions that, lasted up to 20 minutes?
Yeah, we had some people in there for a while reading for a lot of parts. And then some people, they did the basics and were just like, all right, we'll consider.
Yeah.
But because I was going to say that, it seems very much an actor's film and a written film in the sense it's very much dialogue driven, this film. As to what happens, it's not something you see like a car crash. It has to, you get everything going through the dialogue with the interactions of the various actors.
Absolutely.
And I think that I have to give you, props for that as the writer, because you did the script.
Yeah.
And so you write a solid script as far as for dialogue. You know? And
that was the hardest part. Quite often that was the most difficult challenge was making sure that the dialogue didn't feel like it was too preachy. The topic of abortion is very, in this film wasn't meant to be political. It wasn't meant to be political, but then as I'm writing it, I was like, I am taking a stance here. But I didn't want it to be preachy. I still wanted it to be a story, and that was the toughest part besides, I met you and we really hit it off in writing class. And between him and our writing professors, I had one of the best pieces of advice that I got was that, I wrote the same scene 4 times in a row, basically. I had, my main character saying, oh, this is happening to me, this is happening to me, this is happening to me. And, I think maybe you said it at one point. I think 2 other, writing mentors and writing friends of mine said it. They're like, you can cut like 4 pages here if you just, make this scene one scene. That was a really nice moment because I was like, oh yeah, because you live with this idea, for so long in your head and in your heart, and you just you're working on it day in, day out. It was my senior thesis. I didn't.
Oh wow. Yeah.
I didn't want it to be like, anything poorly made. So it's just, just nights, nights, days, afternoons, weekends, mornings, evenings. Every moment, was spent making sure that the script was good before I brought in actors, before I brought in, other crew, So, and it was just, it was a little difficult making sure the writing wasn't preachy or sounded like writing.
No, I'm just saying it sounds very conversational, and it sounds real. You don't have somebody who's standing there giving a monologue about something, for 5 minutes. So that's no preachiness there at all. Okay. But did you have the cast stick strictly to the script? Because some people say, I've had some other directors and writers in here, like Jamie Nash and other people, say, you can sometimes we shoot it once the way I wrote it, then we shoot it again with a little variation, and the third time I say, ad lib it, but give the intent, and so the next actor knows where to come in. I mean, how strictly did you have the actors follow the script, or did they add something of their own ever?
I didn't actually. Well, they didn't have any problem with the script. Like most actors that when you work with them, when you work as an actor, you are told that when you're on set, you know the script word by word by word by word by word. Okay. For the most part, my actors stayed right word by word by word by word by word. Erin did actually, they all did all of their research, they all did all of their homework, they would email me, they would call me, they'd say, let's talk character, let's talk about this, let's talk about that. And of course, as a student filmmaker, as a young filmmaker, that's really exciting for people to dive into the story so deeply and come to the table saying, I want to make this as good a story as possible, in my role. So for the most part, everything was pretty much word by word, save a couple of questions and a couple of just random cuts that we were like, yeah, we don't need that, because the actors would say, do we really need this? And, so I said, no, let's take it out, or add it in,
Okay.
Just quick little chopping blocks.
Yeah, not bad. Right. Okay. Now, location, where was it shot?
We were shot all over.
All over the place.
We were up in York, Pennsylvania at the, what was it called?
Taste Test.
Taste Test. Up in really good restaurant, really cool.
Delicious. Oh my God.
And they just let us use it for the rest of the night. I remember one of the guys on set, Lucas, and we had to pick up an actor. We drove as soon as our class ended straight down to York. We just barreled down.
After maybe they closed or something.
Yeah, that's exactly what it was. They were extremely kind with letting us use their location because for the most part, I think the only thing we did was cover the expense of whoever was, being there for our locations. And it was just a wonderful time working with local businesses, and we rented out an Airbnb for part of our shoot.
Wow.
Just because we're in college, so half of our places are just apartments. Like your little crappy apartments, and with crazy posters of movies everywhere. Because so film student, it hurts. So it was like, cool. We need to rent an Airbnb for one of these locations. So that's what we did.
Fortunately, we found a really good place. Eli, the host, was amazing. He was in and out when he could. He was out most of the time working.
Right.
And he'd pop in every so often and be like, hey, how's it going?
And he had the cutest little dog.
Oh, really?
Which made that so much better.
There you go. Because I thought we were going to say, oh, yeah, it was completely shot in Hagerstown or something. But no.
Well, originally, I really wanted to shoot something out in Hagerstown, just because I'm from there. And, I'd say my network in Baltimore in regards to finding people to help and finding locations is just as big as it is in Hagerstown. But, I'm from Hagerstown. I grew up there. It's home. So I hoped at some point to be able to shoot there, but it's just, from Baltimore, some of my actors are coming from D.C., some of my, crews coming from York, Pennsylvania. I couldn't ask that of them.
And after the York trip, a lot of people were just like, we cannot do another ride like that. That is
exhausting. Exhausting.
Because, it's got that Hagerstown connection, because, you're the third Hagerstown filmmaker now that I've had in here.
I think the demographic title is Hagerstonian.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
Eric Christopher Myers, you, and Shelley Strong. Yeah, so you're the third one from Washington County anyway, because Shelley's not from Hagerstown.
She's from Smithsburg, which is
it's tinier,
like 10 minutes north.
Right.
Yeah.
And of course, what about, I always ask filmmakers, it's not in there much, but your use of music in the film. It's not much there, which, but it seemed to be used appropriately. Because some places, like I know, if my mother's watching me, say, oh, she says, and the music swells and it's taking me away from the dialogue kind of a thing. So I think you used for somebody who's in music, you really went subtle with the musical score there.
And that was definitely an artistic choice.
It was.
I wanted, and I remember I spoke with the composers about this at length, and we hired them out of L.A. Faraz Imamdoust and Sarah Broshowski, if I'm pronouncing that correctly.
Okay.
They were wonderful. They were absolutely wonderful, fantastic collaborators. I am so excited. I can't wait to work with them again. But they reached out to me through my Facebook page. They found where I had said, I'm looking for a composer. I'm a student filmmaker. I'm looking for something, that is in this realm. It's for drama, etc. I didn't put too many details out there. I just wanted to see what kind of response I got, and I got a few. I definitely got a few, but I mean, they didn't know anyone I knew. I didn't know anyone they knew. So it was wonderful that it was just someone completely like random who saw my post and they said, "Cool, let's talk." So Faraz sent me some of his work, and I sent him a playlist that I made on Spotify, and I said, "I'm looking for something along the lines of this." So he said, "Sure." He sent me what he had already done for other films. He sent me what he had worked on, just as a regular artist, and fell in love immediately. I was like, these are the people I want to use. And it was wonderful because it was so, there was so much dialogue between the three of us, excuse me.
Oh, good.
There's a lot of dialogue, and I felt extremely comfortable, especially, this was my first time getting a custom score. I'd never done that before. And I felt so comfortable just saying, a little less of this, a little more of that. Maybe let's try something like this, or oh, that's perfect. Can we have more of that? It was probably about a month, before we finally settled on what is now the When I Leave score. So
that's interesting because I say it is all very subtle. It's not the volume's not turned way up ever. Like, oh, it's a dramatic moment, so the music swells. But you don't get any of that. I mean, and it's almost not there, but you do feel it. It is more for mood.
Absolutely, and a lot of the films that I watch, a lot of the things that I am inspired by, a lot of the directors and people and artists that I am inspired by are very subtle with their music choices. I prefer it to I want them to collaborate. I want them to be able to go like this. I don't want one to overpower the other too much, because I think it was Rhett. It was Rhett who had said, our writing professor.
Okay.
Who had said something about, a film, or writing especially, but writing and filmmaking should be very, a finely tuned emotional machine, And in my opinion, if I have a score that's just in your face and it's just so loud and overpowering, it doesn't serve the story. It doesn't help the story along. It doesn't, bring the audience into the world further. It actually takes them out. So, and I was absolutely certain, when I picked these composers to work with, that they were going to be able to deliver on that.
Well, great, because I was going to say, that's more like the big scores and the symphonic orchestras are kind of like old school, old Hollywood, even though, I would think Spielberg is somewhat still kind of an old school type director, because all those John Williams scores, they're like, get loud sometimes, but... So not for like a movie like you were doing. Now you wrote it, you directed it, you also produced it primarily. I know you produced it as well. But did you ever think of also starring in it? Because the young woman reminded me of you, just brunette, slender, the whole thing, and I said, did you ever, that's why I said, sometimes did you see yourself in that character? And it says, did you ever think of ever also saying, I'm going to play this part?
Absolutely not.
No?
Nope. No.
Oh, you fooled Daniel, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't want to deal with having to direct and having to produce and being the writer.
She was literally doing everything.
Literally.
Which she already basically was.
Yeah.
And everyone else was just trying to help her out, make sure that she did it.
Okay.
Yeah.
He got through.
Okay. Well, that's why it would have been too much.
Absolutely. I mean, there's some projects that I'm working on right now, working on writing, and that we're working on producing, and creating some more stories where there's a possibility of me being in it somewhere. If I'm not starring in it, then maybe I can support it somehow. Because I very much want to continue working on the acting side of things.
Oh, okay.
However, I don't want the story and the film ultimately to suffer because I'm too busy, putting on too many hats. To me, it doesn't.
Well, it's harder. I think you have to be a director for a while to get to the point where you can be comfortable directing yourself. Or like when you're in front of the camera, the first AD's taken over or something. But,
and that's a huge thing. You know, in some cases, yes, I'd say a lot of filmmakers may be intimidated by starring in their own works. I know actually a few of my up and coming, you know, role models for directing are young women who end up putting themselves into their stories. You know,
There you go.
you know, it's just being able to wear all of those hats and still make everything work on time, work on budget is something personally am still hesitant to jump into quite yet, you know.
Yeah, because
maybe this time next year I'll be like, oh, I've been there, done that. I, you know, did 3 more projects and I started on all of them. I don't know, but
I was going to say that, you know, you're growing up at a time where you can have role models. I mean, people pump to mind right now that I admire somebody like a Tina Fey, who writes, directs, stars.
She does everything.
And Lena Dunham, yeah, another one, you know, and some other great women out there. But now here's another thing. For any filmmaker, the hard part is the ending. And I want to know about your choice for the ending you picked, because it just kind of goes to black and then it says 4 years later. You know, sort of like, where did you go from as far as saying getting that character's choice, which isn't completely spelled out, because I mean she gets the Marines and the kid at the end, and the husband, you know, and this is the guy she was not with is with.
And so actually, that was a question that I received in the Q&A from like after the film.
Yeah. How'd you make that decision? Yeah.
Actually, no. It was so. Are the guy and the girl still together? And yeah, and I was okay with it being a little mysterious, a little bit not quite clear.
Yeah.
Because my answer to that question was, you know, families come in all shapes and sizes now. You know, people can be not together and still have kids and still, you know, provide that child with a happy and wonderful childhood and life, ultimately. So in the end, technically, no, the leading lady and the leading man do not get back together. They raise the child, but they're just kind of like, okay, cool, hello, you know, good to see you, and they take care of the kid, and they're friends, you know, but that's about it. So I actually considered, and we'd talked about this
a
little
this was something we had in great detail, because it was a tough ending.
We considered, I considered writing a different ending for it.
Yeah, was there an alternate ending where there was an abortion?
Yeah, there have been in my mind, you know, but I just, you know, in writing class we learned write the ending for the character, not you know, for you, not for anyone else. It's the right ending for the character. It's the right ending for the story.
And the way the story was going, it's just there's no way she cannot. She has to go through with this. It's just it would be almost kind of inappropriate and be like, I learned nothing.
Yeah, it just, to me, it made more sense to show that it's hard, but it was also more realistic to say women can have it all. They can do it all. It'll be exhausting. It'll be crazy, but you can have a career and have a family and, you know, have friends and have a life without having to sacrifice all of it. You know, or any of it, or any facet.
I was going to say, it's a little tough, but I said, you know, it is subtle. I mean, you don't know whether she and the guy are together. She's coming home and he brings the kid, but he could have been watching the kids while she was deployed, you know, that kind of thing, and not that they're living together. And I think what you set up that ending, because people say, oh, well, that's the pat ending, right? She keeps the kid, she gets the military career, everything's wonderful. And
everything's hunky-dory.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I think the one scene you can say where kind of justifies it for me is when the mother and daughter are talking and the mother says, you know, I almost aborted you.
Yeah.
But your dad said, you know, go on this adventure with me. But you don't see a dad in this film.
Nope. There's just too many characters.
I know, I'm just saying.
It's just too many characters. We didn't need them.
Signing another person on would have been exhausting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the things I want to bring up, because I saw it there, and I guess this was one of those films, is a lot of the filmmakers that come here say it's tough making films on your own, on micro budgets. But one of the things that was declared, I guess you were proud of, is saying, oh, you've had at least two movies that you had fully funded. How did you get your films fully funded?
Basically just GoFundMe. We reached out to our friends and family and communities, be like, hey, we're making this film. You don't have to donate. Just anything you can give would be great. We would appreciate it dearly. Here's some stuff we'll give back to you if you help us out. And yeah, no,
and it worked out.
Pulled through. I think we hit a couple thousand over our budget.
Yeah, we ended up, so our original Kickstarter goal was $3,000, and we ended up making like 3,600.
Wow.
Right, it was Kickstarter.
Extra. You can have.
Yeah, well, I mean, and actually, it's funny because people would ask us, why Kickstarter? Because Kickstarter has a hard time limit, you know. Well, there are less fees involved, and it was just a whole, you know, budgetary issue at that point. They were just like, you know what, let's put ourselves to the test. Let's see if we can raise it in this amount of time, because we're graduating in May, so we kind of really have to get this on the road. So we need to get rolling on it anyway. So.
Right, and with that $600, you could have had a heck of an after party.
Actually, we ended up using whatever money we had left from production for post-production, you know, making sure that everything sounded good, everything looked good, things like that. So every penny went straight to making sure that the film was the best product that we could make.
Great, because I mean, it's tough. I got another filmmaker in here, Mark Schell. I don't know if you know who he is, but he self-funds all his films, and any money he makes off of the last film, he rolls into the budget of the next
project.
one.
Absolutely.
That's what he does.
Unfortunately, I know myself, I'm not quite there yet to be able to self-fund my own stuff. I can put a little bit of capital into it. However, I'm still very much on that learning to adult train.
Yeah, okay.
The adulting life, as millennials say.
Okay. Now, here's the thing. In your life, you've always been a singer.
Absolutely.
Right? And I think even when you went to college, it might have started in music, and then you go to Towson and go to the film program. So where did the transition come from, maybe I want a career as a singer, to now I want to be a filmmaker? What happened there?
So I originally went to Coastal Carolina University for musical theater. I was a Bachelor of Fine Arts student, and about a year and a half in, I started realizing that I love performing. I love acting, I love singing. You know, I love being a character in the worlds that the playwrights and other, you know, projects I was working on created. However, I realized that I wanted to learn how to make film technically. I didn't want to be one of those people, and not that there's anything that wrong with that, but I didn't want to be one of those people who, you know, said, I have this idea, and then has no idea what they're talking about. You know, I wanted to walk into it with some technical knowledge. I wanted to set myself up to be the best potential production assistant, or the best director, or the best assistant director, or whatever. You know, even a better actor by learning how to make film technically. You know, by learning how to edit, by learning how to write. You know, and a lot of film school is definitely networking. You know, what I missed out of the first year and a half, I ended up gaining in an amazing network of people who are even smarter than me in their respective tracks, you know, cinematographers and editors and colorists, and, you know, I ended up gaining, you know, by going to film school. And there's absolutely that aspect, and that absolutely played into my decision to change paths and change schools and uproot, you know, halfway through my college career, still graduated on time, but uproot myself, you know, and go for something that, you know, most people were like, you want to be on the other side of it now? And I was like, yeah, I do.
But do you want to maybe still get into musical theater or sing on camera or something?
I think I would love to sing on camera. Actually, I know I would love to sing on camera. That would be absolutely wonderful, absolutely excellent.
Because when you were younger, it said you were interested either in musical theater or going to California and making movies. Do you still have a sense that you want to go Hollywood or go Atlanta, or do you want to stay in Maryland?
Right now, things are up in the air. I've been teaching myself to kind of take things a little more slowly. You know, recently I just got off of 2 different sets, or 3 different sets. You know, the past 2 weeks, it's just been exhausting, and I'm kind of learning to just kind of make decisions a little bit more on a daily basis first before deciding to completely move. Yeah. So I need to personally, I need to learn how to take care of myself and put myself first and still enjoy being 23.
Okay, sure. Yeah, don't just work your way up and then you get to be 40 and say, look at all that I missed, for all the fun stuff.
Absolutely. I want to have both, and that again is also where the film comes in. You know, I want to have it all. And
you want to have your cupcake and eat it too.
Absolutely. I even bought some today. I told you I would, and I brought cupcakes today.
At least you keep your word.
Absolutely.
Now, tell me a little bit then about, because you alluded to them, current and recent projects that you can talk about.
Sure. That absolutely. So you know what.
Well, I mean, basically, we do have one project that basically what we're trying to do. I'm trying to spoil too much, but we want to work on a, I guess, topic basically kind of like with music. We want to work with music, and we kind of want to do a music video of a sense. We have a song picked out. We have to deal with some technical stuff, make sure it's all good on like the legal end. Don't want to take it down. We just want to do it for fun. She told me about it, and like the day of the Maryland International Film Fest, and I was already writing down like the song. I was basically just trying out the beats, and just
that was fun.
Getting a basic.
Yeah, it was, you know, it was in what we shall refer to as right now the Untitled Water Project, because we were going to. It's the thing. Water. Yeah, I'm gonna back up a little bit. The thing with When I Leave was that. By the time we were done with it, by the time he and I were done with it, by the time all of our cast and our crew were done with it, we were just kind of tired. We were exhausted, you know.
Oh yeah, sure.
It was very ambitious. It was a 20-minute film.
Yes, it was, and for somebody so young.
We're still in school.
Yeah, we were still in school. We were like, you know what? Let's just, you know, this is what we want to do. Let's do it.
It doesn't look amateurish at all.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that greatly. And you know, even though we're trying to go a little more short form with this Untitled Water Project. It's still extremely ambitious, as the title, let's call it for now, implies. There's going to be some water in it.
Okay, sure.
We're going to probably dunk some people, and you know, have to have some stunt people and lifeguards on set.
Interesting.
It's a 3-minute piece, but you know, we're going to go tell the story that we want to tell, and tell the story that I want to tell. You know.
So could you have experience though in music videos already?
A little bit.
Hey Baby or whatever it was called?
Hello Baby.
Hello Baby.
Yes, I actually, we filmed another piece of that this past week. That was one of those 3 projects that I was working on the past couple weeks. And that I would love to at some point, you know, introduce that circle of people to my other circle of people with Danny and Andrew and Michael and all of those guys. At some point I'd like those worlds to clash, but you know, at the time being, you know, it's a different project, and that music video, I was really happy to be behind the scenes or in front of the camera on, just because, you know, it's nice to get back to being an actor. You know, it's nice to be, you know, not having to deal with all of the technicals for a moment, you know, and just kind of be in the world, like fully invested in the world. And I miss that about acting.
Did you sing in that, or were you just lip syncing?
That was lip syncing.
That was not your voice.
That was
on the
not
track.
my voice. No,
Okay.
no. Eliza was actually Eliza Costello, a young artist from Rockville area.
Oh, it was her singing.
Wonderful, wonderful singer. Was the singer on that project.
Good voice, yeah.
Beautiful.
Definitely.
Absolutely.
Well, anyway, I think we're going to have to wrap this up. I got the high sign, and so of course we can always have you back, and we want to maybe have Daniel work with us, and I have a proposition for you too.
Oh, fantastic!
And
fantastic.
we'll tell you about
all
that.
The collaboration.
What I'd like you to do is get in here in your camera and tell people, I guess both of you, what your contact information is, how they can find you and your product.
Sure. After you.
My name is Daniel Brennan. Just find me on Facebook, I guess. Just Daniel Brennan. You'll recognize me. Unfortunately, I'm not on too many social media sites. I guess you can find me on LinkedIn.
Okay.
Other than that, I'm pretty behind the scenes. Most of my contacts I get from Alexis.
Okay. And then Alexis.
Sure. My name is Alexis Baroni. Oh, I'm going into my actor slate. Hold on, sorry. My name's Alexis, and you can always go to my website. There's a contact form there, but a direct email for me is hello@alexisbaroni.com.
There you go. Terrific. Or Alexis S. Baroni. I see a
on
lot.
Instagram, yeah. On Instagram, I added my little my middle name there. So.
Yeah, middle initial. Make people almost feel like they're lisping. Alexis.
It's kind of true. It's kind of true. They're trying to pronounce it. They're like, you spell your name with 2 S's? No.
No. She's not being that artsy Hollywood now.
Not quite.
Okay.
Not quite.
Well, thank you both for being here.
Oh, boy.
It was a pleasure. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. It was well worth the wait. And folks, guess what? We're out of time again. So catch us next time here on TV Free Baltimore, either here with movie reviews, because you will be seeing this film as well, so you'll have a context of what we were talking about, and also any of our other great programs. So until the next time, this is Paul Stefan saying good night.
We hope hope you're enjoying your visit here this evening. Now, on with the show.
So the Libertarian movement and the Libertarian Party are really about two things. One is a general sensibility towards personal freedom. Not having others tell us what to do, not having others intruding in the personal decisions in our lives. The other part of the Libertarian movement and party is limited accountable government, a government that does for us what it said it would do and does so in a way that is sustainable over time and even over generations. That's the Libertarian Party. The Libertarian Party is the natural home for those like me who would describe themselves as socially tolerant and fiscally responsible. Yes, we see social problems in the country and we want to address them. But no, we don't think that we can have a government that is just borrowing and borrowing and borrowing in order to fund programs to chase the goals that we have set for ourselves. So the core idea of the Libertarian movement and the Libertarian Party is that we want to preserve our liberties, our freedoms, while also advancing both social justice and economic prosperity. All three, liberty, justice, and prosperity, make up legs of the stool of our nation, our community, our shared community. That's what the Libertarian Party is about, fundamentally. David Lasher, Libertarian candidate for the Maryland 3rd Congressional District.
Good morning. I see you've already met my colleague, Mike Lee. He's a good guy, and we do a lot of things together and work on a lot of projects together. You might be scratching your head and asking yourself, what is a libertarian doing talking to a bunch of evangelical students? Aren't libertarians crazy? Aren't they kind of scary? And I think it's a misconception sometimes because when you hear the word libertarian, you think, well, gosh, libertarians, they want anything goes, right? No rules, no laws, you can do whatever you want. And it's not exactly what we advocate. Libertarians do advocate freedom, liberty. We advocate government ought to leave you alone and that you ought to get to make choices on your own. But would that mean lawlessness? Would that mean no rules, anything goes? Well, even libertarians believe in some sort of rules. And so one of the rules that libertarians believe in is something called the non-aggression principle. And this is a principle really that when you hear it, you'll say, well, gosh, most government is founded upon this. The non-aggression principle means that under a libertarian society, if we had one, you pretty much could do whatever you wanted as long as you didn't hurt somebody else. So as long as you didn't invade their sphere of their rights, you could kind of do what you wanted. And you say, well, gosh, then there still would be all kinds of crazy things. Everybody would be doing heroin, there'd be prostitution, there'd be all these things. And really many of us who are Christian and libertarian believe that not only would you be restrained by government from doing things that would harm somebody else, but that a libertarian society or even a republic, as we were intended to be, would have some kind of restraint. And some people have described it as virtue. Washington described the beginning of the Republic, and he said it would be necessary for our country to succeed to have virtue. So you'd have the idea that the government would restrain you from harming other individuals, but there has to be something that also guides us, that keeps us on the straight and narrow, allows us to cooperate as a civilized society, allows us to be an advanced society. Think of it this way. There are laws against stealing, and there should be, but how many in here would steal if there were not a law against stealing? Oh, good. I'm glad we don't have any thieves here today. But the thing is most of us don't steal. Most of us don't rape, murder, do all these horrific things, not because there's a law against it, but because we have a sense of right and wrong. We have a moral compass. We have something grounded in religion. We have this sense of virtue. And you think, well, how many people have this? And that's sort of the question of where a society goes over a long period of time. Some would argue that we had more virtue 20 years ago, 40 years ago, 50 years ago. That may or may not be true, but there's at least some argument to that. Some who look at Europe say that they've abandoned religion and they've become much more secular, and they've sort of lost their sense of right and wrongs in some ways. So really you have to have both. You have to have a government that restrains you from harming someone, but you also want to have a people that is a virtuous people. There's a theologian by the name of Os Guinness, and he puts it this way. He says that liberty requires restraint, but the only restraint consistent with liberty is self-restraint. And so the reason why that's important is we often see, particularly from Christians, they come to Washington and they say, government needs, we've got all these terrible, immoral things happening, government has to fix them. When in reality, it may be that there are some things that do need fixing that perhaps we can't fix. And I'll give you an example. The number one correlation, causation, whatever you want to have it, with poverty in our country. If we say we want to wipe out poverty, what's the number one thing that is linked to poverty in our country? It's having children before you're married. Now, I'm not here to moralize or tell you, what's right or wrong. I'm just here to tell you that is the number one link. If you look at charts, there's a book by Charles Murray called Coming Apart at the Seams, and he does 2 categories of charts on everything, all the socioeconomic, all the income, everything about your life, and there are 2 tracks. One, people who don't finish high school and have children before they're married, and they're here along the bottom of the x-axis. And then you see at the very top of our society, the top elite, and these aren't all true, but they're mostly true, it's generalizations, people who finish college and wait to have kids. But then you say, well, what's government going to do about this? I can't make you wait. So really, sometimes when I agree with a group of ministers, they say, what are you going to do to make us a better, more moral nation? I say, well, what are you going to do? And really, there has to be some of that, and I think there has to be this realization the government can't do everything for you. You have to be part of it. And it doesn't mean it's not important. It doesn't mean that virtue is not important. It doesn't mean that we don't want virtuous people in government, but it means that government's not going to make us a virtuous society. And I think that's very important when we think about what we want from government and where we're going. A second way of looking at this would be on the idea of rights. So the right to be left alone, the right to practice your religion, the right to have property, the right to have speech, all of these rights that are sort of in the Bill of Rights. Did the government grant you these rights, or did they pre-exist government and the government guarantees these rights? And it's very important when we look at rights because many of us who see the Founding Fathers and talk about the idea of natural rights or God-given rights, we think they're innately yours. The right to speak, to practice your religion, to keep the fruits of your earning. These are yours. They're just inherently yours. Now you say, well, we have to give up something to be in a society, right? Well, there are certain things, like for example, your property. As you go out and you earn your check and you get your check and you've worked 2 weeks, a portion of it's taken by the government. And you say, well, aren't they taking my stuff? Well, they are, and we have this idea, maybe not explicit, but we have this idea of a social compact. So you say, we're going to live in a civilized world and part of my check's going to be taken. And so we kind of implicitly agree to this, but if at the end of 2 weeks you were to make $600 and you got your check and it said minus $600 and your net was 0, how many people would like living in that society? Then 100% of the fruits of your labor would belong to government, would be taken from you. So the question always is, when we look at issues like this, whose money is it? Well, I think it's yours. Are you willing to give up some of it? Yes, but I want to minimize how much I give up it because I want to maximize my freedom and my ability to either give it to my church, help the people in my community, or help my family. And so really it's always a question of maximum or minimum. How much government do you want? You want the least amount of government that we need, because the more government you have, or the more of your paycheck you give up, the less of your freedom you have. And so this is the tug of war, but I think it's an interesting way of looking at it when you try to decide, do you want more government or less government? Do you want government to do X or Y? Is government good at doing things? You ask yourself, if you have $100, if each of you had $100 and you were going to give it to somebody, if you thought, I really want to help people, would you give it to the federal welfare system, or would you give it to the Salvation Army? I wouldn't hesitate for a second. There's no way I would send $1 up here that I didn't have to, because they're just not very good at it. They're so far away from the people that can't do it, but I can see in my community what the Salvation Army does. I can go to the homeless shelter. I can go to Helping Hands in Christ and see how they help people pay their bills. Now you say, well, government does do some good for people. They probably do, but they're horribly inefficient at it. And so you say, well, we need government to take care of people. It's like, these are the people that can't run the post office. All right? They have a monopoly on delivering letters and they lose $1 billion a quarter. They're just not very good at it. So government is best that governs least, so you have the most amount of freedom, but government is also best that governs at a more local level. Doesn't make it perfect, but you can at least see it. Your city councilman or city councilwoman lives down the street. You can talk to her about, or him about, an idea about how you might have better sidewalks or how we might do something for the homeless in our community. But if you send it up here, we will throw lots of money at it and it won't be any better. Department of Education, we didn't have it when I was a kid. We have it now, and our scores are maybe not any better than they were before we had the Department of Education. You say, well, should government be involved in education? Well, there wasn't any provision for it in the Constitution. You say, well, no government? What would happen? What would happen if the Department of Education disappeared tomorrow? What would happen to us? Probably nothing. The thing is most of your taxes that support your schools are from local taxes. In Kentucky, 95% of our taxes are from Kentucky taxes. And we have a Department of Education there, but we duplicate everything. So the Department of Education has had all these teaching standards and testing standards, and then Kentucky does the same thing, and they're spending millions of dollars doing the same thing the Department of Education is doing. We take all these tests, and the teachers are forced to teach to the test, and then in the end, we're not really positive whether anybody's any smarter other than they can take these tests. And there still are those who argue that we're not doing better. One of the things I think we could do in education is allow more freedom.
How much would Ben Jealous cost you? Even he doesn't know. Jealous can't explain his own education plan. Listen for yourself.
The exact cost will be tallied up by the legislative analysts when I'm governor. It's expensive to figure all that out.
Jealous has proposed higher income taxes, higher taxes on things you buy online. He's even considering a sales tax increase. Ben Jealous, another big spender who'll raise your taxes to pay for it.
4 years ago, people were fleeing Maryland. 43 tax hikes, even taxing the rain. 100,000 jobs lost. So we elected Larry Hogan. $1.2 billion in tax, toll, and fee relief. Highest ever funding for schools. Healthiest bay in a generation. Maryland's back. When we needed a leader, Hogan was there. And when he needed us, we returned the favor. Larry Hogan, changing Maryland.
You're watching Maryland Politics here on TV Free Baltimore.
I want to welcome everybody to our first episode of TV Free's Maryland Politics. And in the studio today, I have Tony Campbell, who's actually running as a Republican for the U.S. Senate. Welcome to the studio.
Thank you, Derek. Appreciate it.
So, right out the gate, I'm going to ask you, why
are you doing this?
Why are you doing this, and how, as a Republican, as an African-American Republican, do you expect to stand a chance in a predominantly Democratic ran city of Baltimore?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me here. The reason why I'm running, there's three things I can lay on as far as reasons. One is that I guess politics, personal, and policy. The politics of it is I teach politics at Taos University. I've been there for about 13 years, and so I've been involved in Republican politics since Ellen Sauerbrey's second run in 1998. And I've always had this thought experiment that an African-American conservative could win statewide. That the numbers and the margins would bear that, if you kept your margins in Eastern Shore, Western Maryland, Southern Maryland, and Hartford, Anne Arundel, and Baltimore County, then you can offset whatever margins that you lose by, if you can do 75-25 or 80-20 in Prince George's, Baltimore City, and Montgomery County, then you have a shot of winning statewide. So that's kind of and that's in the gubernatorial turnout, right? Presidential elections or gubernatorial elections are a little bit different as far as turnout because of the top of the ticket and the energy that race usually brings. So, given the numbers as they are in a gubernatorial election, I've always thought that that would be possible. And then on top of that, you know, we're not the blue state that people think that we are. You know, the last 2 of the 3 governors are Republicans, which tells me that if we have the right candidate, the right message, and the right time, conservative Democrats and independents will vote for a Republican candidate. So, by no means do I think it's going to be an easy election. I think that the incumbent, Senator Cardin, is I think he's being pushed on a couple different angles. I don't think that, you know, Chelsea Manning doesn't drop into this race, you know, fresh from, you know, being commuted from her sentence, without thinking that Ben Cardin is vulnerable from the progressive side of the Democrat Party. So I think there are opportunities, especially in 2018 in Trump's, you know, President Trump's midterm election, to define who we are as Republicans and conservatives and why our message means something to people. You know, how does it make their people's lives better? And so that's the first part of it. It's the politics, the sheer numbers of how a statewide race is actually, how it plays out numbers-wise. Personally, I've been around since Ellen Sarbary's second run in 1998, so this is my first rodeo. And one of the things that I know for certain is that when this race gets tight and when whoever is on the Democrat side versus Governor Hogan, you know, the race card will be brought up. And when they'll be talking about, you know, we're going to turn back the clock and women are not going to have any rights and we're going to be very draconian and we're going to outlaw all bunch of things because we just don't like people and we're Republicans. And that fear usually works. It worked against Bob Ehrlich. It worked against Ellen Sarbary. I'm glad that Governor Hogan in his race in 2014 didn't accept that narrative and just kept on with the message of the economy and talking about changing Maryland and making it stronger. But that will come up again. And so what I hope to do as the Republican nominee for U.S. Senate is to call the other side call them out on their stuff, on that narrative, on that, you know, crap is what they're going to try to pull. So that's the personal side of it. And then the policy, there's a couple things that I'm very concerned about, education being one of them. You know, I profess like I know stuff, you know, being a teacher. And so there's K-12 issues. You know, we need to do a better job of being responsible, being constitutionally responsible for the children that are under our care, and to make sure that, you know, things that happening in, you know, especially in the Baltimore metropolitan region where you've got the Baltimore County, you know, superintendent being indicted for 4 counts of contract manipulation. You got the issues going on with Baltimore City. In Prince George's County, you don't even know what the test scores say and how that stuff is being manipulated. But I think it's our responsibility as adults to call out other adults, and if they're not doing their job, then they need to go. You know, the education of our kids mean that much. You know, I'm not here to hold hands for adults who are not doing their jobs. Higher education is a different story. That's kind of what I know. I think that, you know, the way that we do higher education is a 20th century model in a 21st century world. You know, that if an institution is taking dollars from, you know, government dollars or our tax dollars in several ways, research grants and that funding stream, tuition, and how the government subsidizes, you know, tuition costs or you know, student loans in that way. And, you know, capital budget costs, I mean, as far as building new buildings. And so at least 3 different funding streams that they're getting from the government and from our tax dollars. And yet they still raise tuition rates. And yet we have, you know, students that are graduating with degrees that they really can't use in the workplace because they're doing another job. And they're saddled with 6 figures of student loan debt. So who's really making out there?
Yeah.
Right. So, you know, higher education is an important position that we're going to take a stand on. And there's a couple other ones. There's property and what I think as far as being conservative, what does that mean for people in their lives? You know, talking about generational wealth and building that wealth and building that legacy, not about the money that you have in the pocket, but what you can do with it. You know, talking about, you know, if we're really talking about self-determination and limited government and, you know, that kind of conservative piece and, you know, of our ideology, how does that really impact people's lives? So those are the kind of things that we're going to focus on in the campaign. It's going to be interesting. We're going to do the things we need to do. We're already reaching out, getting endorsements, raising, you know, calling people, asking for money and raising money. You know, we got to do that.
Yeah.
And that's kind of, you know, what you have to do when you're campaigning.
Well, it seems like an excellent cause. Your stance, your platform is amazing. You're hitting, to me, you seem to be hitting on all the right points and all the right needs. You mentioned a lot. It's almost like I don't know where to start. You mentioned Trump's election, which was something a lot of people didn't expect to happen. So I guess as a you know, conservative yourself, you were able to kind of step back and look at the broad picture of how someone like a businessman mogul Donald Trump could get elected. What was your take?
I predicted that, actually.
Did you predict it?
So I was. It was so funny. So there's about a week before the election, I was talking to some of my colleagues, and you know, and of course most of my colleagues are left of center. I mean, that's university campus, and we're talking about the election, and I'm like, well, you know, Trump's going to win. Like, I don't think so. Like, yeah, I traveled through Ohio, Pennsylvania, because I'm originally from Pennsylvania, and went back home, and there were no Hillary Clinton signs in Western Pennsylvania. None. Bill Clinton owned Western Pennsylvania. I mean, Pittsburgh. He owned Pittsburgh. And there was no Hillary Clinton signs in Western Pennsylvania, Eastern Ohio. And what really ticked it off, got me really thinking about this, it was about 3 days before the election. I'm driving down Prairie Parkway, and usually every 10 feet there are signs saying vote for the Democrats, vote for the Democrats, vote for the Democrats. No signs. Prairie Parkway, one of the major thoroughfares in Baltimore City, not one sign that said Hillary Clinton. Now, you know, that tells me that the support was weak.
Yes.
But more importantly, I think it tends to show what I've always thought we do in this country, is that we do a pendulum shift. So, pulling on my political scientist hat here for a second, instead of the candidate hat,
please do.
Is that we you know, we go from, you know, a Jimmy Carter to a Ronald Reagan, a H.W. Bush to a Bill Clinton, a Clinton to a George W. Bush, and then Bush to Obama, and Obama to Trump. So, but you don't have a President Obama unless you had 8 years of George W. Bush, and you don't have a Donald Trump unless you have 8 years of Barack Obama. And so then our country kind of gets tired of whatever that status quo is, and then pendulum shifts to the other side. So we've had almost 50 years of the same thing. So what I thought that there would be an outsider. You know, I supported Ben Carson, Dr. Carson, during the primary, until he dropped out, because I thought it was going to be an outsider, because we've done the same thing. You know, as far as, you know, kind of insider Washington kind of mindset, you know, the deep state that we hear about. I mean, that stuff is true. The bureaucracy is true. But the bureaucracy doesn't really care if you're Republican or Democrat. The bureaucracy cares about it staying in power. You know, the D's and the R's, you know, they change from time to time. One thing that I think that Trump is doing, though, is he's kind of breaking that monopoly. And so there's a lot of folks who are very nervous about that. I mean, I think it's good for the Republic to shake it up every once in a while. You know, in fact, it was Thomas Paine said something along those lines. So, you know, I think that, you know, 2018 as Republicans, I think that, again, it's about us to define what we mean, who we are, and how does it make people's lives better. Because if we don't, then the other side, they're pretty good at defining who we are.
Can I ask you? It's not really a personal question, but it's a question that I think would relate to a lot of African Americans. You know, myself, obviously being African American, I'm curious to what is your goal or goals per se in reaching out to the African American community and getting them to understand what true conservatism means?
Well, I think a lot of folks understand what it is. You know, I think the stigma is Republican versus Democrat. I don't think it's about a worldview. I don't think it's about kind of the social issues. I mean, you know, both my parents are preachers. And a lot of folks that I know that go to church, they are pro-life. They have a particular view of the world that I would call social conservatives. They're you know, they're moderate about about the things that they do. They don't go overboard. They live a moderate. They live well. They're not extravagant about what they do. They pretty much keep to their own business, and they're not really concerned about what other people do, right? Now, for me, that is at least libertarian, if not conservative. But you know, I think our community doesn't really understand the meaning of libertarian versus conservative, right? And so,
I agree.
While I think that the mindset and even the heart of conservatism is within our community, you know, the last 50 years of, you know, here, you know, short term versus long term. You know, if you vote for me, if you keep voting for me, I will provide resources for you. You know, I think that, you know, if you're, one of the things I think is a disservice is that both sides talk about we talk about jobs, and jobs is the end all and be all, and that drives me nuts.
Yes.
Because all a job does is to put money in your pocket to go out and buy whatever you need. To be consumers. It's not being a producer. It's not growing anything. It's using the wage that you get in your pocket. So, you know, I think that we do a disservice by limiting ourselves to being consumers, and then we wonder why. You know, if my choice is being a consumer being a Democrat, or being a consumer being a Republican, or what you say is a Republican, then why should I make that decision?
Right.
Because I'm comfortable where I'm at.
Yep.
You know, we've been doing this for, you know, basically since the 1960s. You know, because, you know, for, you know, at least, you know, during the Eisenhower administrations in the 1950s, most black folks were Republican.
Were conservative Republicans,
right? Because of the history of you know, of the other side of the Democrat Party. So, you know, there's a lot of unpacking.
Sure.
You know,
sure.
You know, and you know, the Senate campaign will not be going into a lot of that stuff because, you know, it's as much as I like to be engaged in exchanging ideas and helping. To further the conversation, you know, we're going to be focused on, you know, the things I talked about.
Education
being a key of it.
And that's exactly where I was going. That was my next topic that I wanted to bring up, which you already mentioned, and basically you're already talking about it. A lot of what we're saying is teachings and education, and you mentioned the school system and focusing on things of that nature. So, what's your goals? What's if you were elected in this position, how much authority do you have over the schools and education? I mean, what kind of power is bestowed to you at that time?
Well, as U.S. Senator, there are. This goes to my third point that I didn't mention earlier, right? Is a proper understanding of the role of government, right? So, K-12 education, public education, is supposed to be run by the states and local governments, right? So the the states have the authority through the 9th and 10th Amendments to then decide local educational issues, and then divest some of that power to local school boards, through charters and that kind of thing, through local governments and that kind of thing, because it's better for local governments to deliver local services as opposed to the state trying to do it, all that stuff. So, but what happens if local governments are failing to do it? What prescription can be used to enforce the rightful education of our children? So that's why I said before, it is not, I don't think it's, first of all, it's not the role of the federal government to step in, because, again, 9th and 10th Amendment stuff. But there's some fiduciary responsibility that the national government has, and that is, we do Title I funding, we do free and reduced lunch funding, a variety of things. But the curriculum, curricular standards, teacher standards, the evaluation, what you're talking about, No Child Left Behind, or Park and stuff like that, that stuff is left to the states. So it's my opinion that if local governments are not doing its job, the state government has a constitutional responsibility to then make sure that local government's doing the job.
Just real quick, when you say local government, are you talking about like
Baltimore County Public Schools, Baltimore City Public Schools, Wacomico County Public Schools, whatever that local LEA, the local education agency is, they really do not have the sovereign authority. They are given it by the state. Okay. And then, so then the State Board of Education basically manages those LEAs through a collaborative effort. So what I'm saying is that the state needs to step up and to make sure that if there are failing school systems, then it's not really the responsibility of local government to fix it, because they don't have the constitutional authority to do so. It's the state that is mentioned in the Constitution that has the authority to do so. So I think that's where, instead, because right now, what's happening is that, people don't want to hurt each other's feelings. And we've had literally decades of young people who have been, I don't go as far as saying failed by the schools, but they've been disenfranchised by these schools. I teach at a university, and probably a third of our kids need remedial math, reading, and those are the ones who make it to university. Well, what about these other kids and their futures? We need to be more responsible. We need to take up that mantle and say, look, we will not allow adults to mess this up. So that's,
I understand.
Yeah.
And it's a tough task. It seems like it's a challenge. Everybody is part of every politician's platform is education. You hear every political figure mention it or bring it up.
Yeah, but then what happens is that then, so let's say what happened in Baltimore County. So who takes ownership of that? I mean, so that happens to the superintendent. Whose responsibility? Is it the county executives? Well, he acts like he doesn't really know what happened. Is it the school board? The school board asked for an audit. 4 members of the school board, 5 members of the school board, the school board of Baltimore County, I'm not talking about average voters, folks who sit on the school board asked for an audit, couldn't get it. They couldn't get the audit. So what that tells me is that, this bureaucracy that exists, I mean, somebody knows something. Otherwise, why wouldn't you let the school board see to get an audit? So there's too much, maybe protecting each other or protecting the system or protecting the bureaucracy. No, I'm not about that life. No, we're responsible to make sure that kids are educated.
What it sounds like to me is that is the difference that you possess. There has to be something different personified in order for it to be received properly by constituents or likely constituents. There has to be something glaring that pops out and it just catches everybody's attention, and which leads me to the question.
And it catches people's attention, but unfortunately, there's not the leadership to push that through. And because if it happens,
who would support your ideals? Where is your support system going to come from?
Well, every person that I've mentioned this to, and I've been, I started this kind of an exploratory thing about 4 weeks ago, and filed last Wednesday, and I've probably talked to a couple hundred people across the state. And every person that I've talked to, now, grant you this, they're all Republicans because I'm running in a Republican primary, right? So you have to go and do what you need to do to get past the first hurdle. But every person I talk to is like, well, you're right. But I think we instinctively know that it's right, but until someone takes up the leadership of actually saying what's going on and saying, okay, well, I have no problem, if I, people want to throw rocks at me or something, then go right ahead.
They're going to try to dig up dirt on you.
Yeah, go right ahead. I mean, I think there's a point in time that we have to be about the business of the people and not about whatever interests that are out there. So it's going to be it's going to be a challenge.
When is the elections coming up? When are they?
June 26th is the primary.
Yeah,
I think
this year, 2018.
And November 6th is the general. So we've got a few months. The filing deadline is 2 weeks from today. Right now I think there's 4 or 5 people in the primary.
Do you believe this is true? And it's kind of a rhetorical question, but
no.
I love the answer. I love the answer because it seems like whoever has the most money or the best support campaign, the most signs on the streets, the most TV commercials, that person, male or female, likely ends up winning.
Yeah.
Are you prepared to campaign really strong against your opponents?
Well, I'm not going to campaign against my opponents. That's not the point of this. The point is to talk about the issues that matter.
I love it.
And so, you only have a finite amount of time to get across your message and what you want to try to do. And to waste time talking about other people, it's just diluting the message. So, we're going to be focused. We're going to be focused about what we do. We're going to be cognizant of, the time that exists, and have to get on the phone. You got to call people and ask for money. I mean, that's kind of the way politics works. And so, spend time every day calling folks and gotten a decent amount of response. But we're just starting. We've literally got through 100 people. We probably have 10,000 people to call. Sure. So there's that piece. I've been involved in Republican politics for 20 years. And so I know basically every person that's either appointed or elected or along those lines. And so another part of that, as far as organizationally, is to make make collaborative efforts where you can, and reach out to folks and work together and not work separately. So we're doing some of that too. And just to reach out and just to be at as many places as we can. I mean, because ultimately it's about people going to on election day and on primary election day and choosing the first name on the ballot, which is Campbell right now.
I was about to say C is up there high in the alphabet. So Professor, if you don't mind me asking, how old are you?
52.
52 years old.
52.
Young man still. So that's awesome. I'm asking because you appear to be young. You appear to be in great shape. It seems like you got a lot of great positive years ahead of you to continue this mission. So regardless of what happens in this election, it appears and sounds to me that you won't be giving up anytime soon.
No, I mean it's been 20 years, and unlike other folks, this isn't a flash in the pan. I chose to be Republican because I believe in the tenets of the Republican Party, You know, this isn't personality. This isn't me trying to stroke my ego. This, you know, but I do have confidence that I'm going to win. You know, I'm not doing this because I just want to be a name on a ballot. Just you know, kind of the there's a Republican filling a seat kind of filling a ballot kind of thing. You know, I looked at the numbers. I've been looking at it for almost 20 years. You know, I teach politics. I profess like I know something about it, and so this isn't just a gamble.
I want to thank everybody out there for watching this edition, our first edition of Maryland Politics here at TV Free Baltimore. I'm Derek Sterling, and you guys have a wonderful evening.
You're watching Maryland Politics here on TV Free Baltimore.
Okay, first of all, we're having a honk for justice for Alonzo. Alonzo was killed October 24th of 2012, and there has yet to be an arrest made.
My son was on leave for 4 hours here in Baltimore, Maryland, when he was shot and killed.
This guy's out fighting for our country, comes home and gets shot dead on the streets of Baltimore City. How appalling is that?
We would just like for someone to come forward with any type of information that will possibly lead to arrest and a conviction.
If you know anything about the shooting of Alonzo Gladden Jr., you need to come forward.
We also gave those who wished to destroy space to do that as well. We also gave those who wished to destroy space to do that as well. We also gave those who wished to destroy space to do that as well. We also gave those who wished to destroy space to do that as well. We also gave those who wished to destroy space to do that as well.
This is the Baltimore Police Aviation Unit.
And this is Wanted Wednesday.
Hello, Baltimore, and welcome to another episode of Wanted Wednesday. I'm Detective Jeremy Silbert alongside Detective Nikki Fenoy, and this week we need your help to find 2 suspects. Who's the first suspect we're looking for?
Thank you, Jeremy. The first person we're looking for is 30-year-old Brandon Floyd, wanted for armed robbery. On June 11, 2018, at approximately 9:15 a.m., officers were called to the 4600 block of Northern Parkway, which is the Rite Aid Pharmacy, for a report of an armed robbery. Store employees told officers that a suspect entered the store and asked to speak to a manager. The suspect then implied that he had a weapon and demanded several cartons of cigarettes before leaving the store. During the course of the investigation, detectives identified Brandon Floyd as the robbery suspect. Jeremy, who do we have next?
The second suspect we're looking for this week is 43-year-old Kelly Phipps. He's wanted for an assault that happened on June 21st, 2018 in the 2200 block of West Fayette Street. At approximately 6:30 p.m., Phipps and a woman were involved in an argument in the block. Another man saw the argument and attempted to intervene. However, during the course of the altercation, Phipps pulled out a knife and stabbed the man several times who was attempting to break up the fight. The victim of the stabbing was transported to an area hospital where he was treated for several stab wounds. Fortunately, he recovered from his injuries, and Kelly Phipps now has a warrant out for his arrest for assault.
There you have it, Baltimore. 2 more suspects we need your help finding.
We'll put the phone numbers on the bottom of the screen. If you have any information at all about the whereabouts of these suspects, give us a call. 2 our suspects who we identified this week. If you see yourself on Wanted Wednesday, give us a call or come into any police district to turn yourself in. And of course, don't forget about the BPD app. It's free to download and very easy to use. For Detective Nikki Fenoy, I'm Detective Jeremy Silbert. For Gino Innocentes, working hard behind the camera, thanks for watching Wanted Wednesday, and we'll see you next week.
The
individuals profiled on Wanted Wednesday are presumed innocent of committing the crimes described until proven guilty in a court of law.
Hi, this is Cindy Williams, and you're watching TV Free Baltimore.
This is Gunhild Carling, and you are watching TV Free Baltimore. You are not watching. You have to watch TV Free Baltimore.
In all of freedom's history, there has never been an organization quite like the National Rifle Association of America. No other people are so alert, so vigilant, so unafraid to take a stand and go out and fight for what's good and right. We, the people of the National Rifle Association, represent the very best of America's strength and of America's character.
You're watching The Paul Stefan Show on TV Free Baltimore.
Hello, this is Paul Stefan, and welcome to another edition of the show. And tonight we have a man of many facets, many talents. He's a producer, an actor, a writer, a lecturer, a filmmaker, and has been a casting director. That's Robert Neal Marshall, and we'll hit upon some of those career paths with him this evening in the little time we have. Welcome, Robert.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here.
You talked about a little about the diversity in a career. Do you want to kind of expand on this broad career you've had?
Well, I think in the arts, you as freelance people, you sometimes have to work in many facets to keep employed.
Right.
And also there is the constant building of projects from one to the other where you need to spend a certain amount of time, obviously, with each project to build it, and sometimes that means you're not generating revenue while you're working on these projects until you build investment and so forth. So unless you're independently wealthy, you have to gig a lot.
Right.
And I found myself through my career, as you get jobs, one job is a brilliant job, but then there are gaps and you're working on other things to build the next job. So I found myself writing at various times, both theater pieces and also shorts and films. I found myself doing documentary films and so forth because opportunities came up with subjects and things that were both fun, and it was an exciting thing to do in life, and there was an investment either by others or myself or combined to make them happen. And then the acting is, as all actors know, you can be very busy for periods. Unless you suddenly hit stellar heights, you're a working actor, and so there are dry periods and there are busy periods. And when a job comes up, if it's related somehow to the arts and it's something productive, I would go for it while still working on other things. So it was never one thing because you have to keep moving, as I think a lot of people in the business know.
Oh, interesting. But, I mean, I've seen too many people, or I've not interviewed anybody who has such a varied resume as you have.
It's interesting, and I think they all are connected. One of the things that I do, because I was given an opportunity as a lecturer, a guest lecturer for the Cunard Line with their Cunard Insights, and I do that a couple of times a year. And my subjects they're all film and theater related, either to a documentary film that I've done or something that I'm connected with or theater. So in a way people say, well, you're, like you just said, they're so varied, but I said they aren't really, because there is a through line. There is either a project that I worked on or a subject that I have covered in my work or something directly related to my work. So the arts are very broad.
Yes. Now, do you have a favorite media that you work in?
I would probably say at this point in my life, it's got to be film. I think that is majorly a connection for me with a lot of my cohorts. I know many that you've had on the show, some that will soon to be on the show. And I love the acting work and some fun jobs that have come along. But I like the organization. I like putting the pieces together. I like doing things sometimes that nobody else wants to do. I love watching the process, and I find that particularly later in my life and my career, after certain changes and things that have happened to me, that focus has been more on that organization, that work, and it seems to be I'm pushed in that direction where I might have a greater influence and the ability to work with various people, to hire people, to let people meet each other, to give people opportunities, as I was given opportunities. I love that feeling, and I love watching all the pieces come together, and I love feeling the responsibility of having to live up to demands and working with teams of people, and hopefully that they all get along, you know.
Now, of course, I could say that film is in your blood. That one of the things that really impressed me, maybe you can talk a few minutes about that.
Sure.
Your grandfather being a newsreel cameraman.
Yeah. That's one of the lectures that I talk about on the Queen Mary as well. You mentioned that. Yeah, I call the lecture From Edison to D-Day because I do basically the history of the newsreels, starting with Edison, who was a major element in the invention of the movie camera and the projectors and so forth, and worked alongside many others who were growing in that industry. So I cover the history of the newsreels, and I use my grandfather's career sort of as a benchmark. But my grandfather started out as a kid going into the newsreels. He was an early cameraman. He filmed Lindbergh's takeoff from Roosevelt Field in 1927. It was just a routine job. All these crazy people were trying to get the Orteig Prize, and they literally would go down and watch these crazy aviators take off and crash into the bushes in Long Island. And this one day, my grandfather was called out for another crazy idiot trying to do the gig. And this time, my grandfather had a sound man with him. Sound was brand new in 1927, and the talkie newsreels actually came out before the Jazz Singer, before the first films.
Oh, okay.
And so my grandfather filmed the first talkie newsreel with Charles Lindbergh and so forth.
Amazing.
And that led him to then do Eyes and Ears of the World, which was a Hearst Metrotone program, and they sent him to Africa and all these different places. And that led him in various directions, and he was then a newsreel cameraman during World War II, and he landed on the beaches of Normandy carrying a black and white camera for the newsreels, but he had a color camera with color film for himself to take home movies, to show the family back home. And those ended up in the National Archives. It's some of the rare color footage that's been shown on the news. I think Roger Stevens Jr. is the only, Roger Stevens, not Jr., that was the father, was one of the other people, the producer, who had some of the other keen color movies.
Oh, that's great, because I did see the clip, because there's a clip from your lecture about the newsreels.
So you saw a little bit of the history.
And I saw it, and I showed it to my father today, because he's a World War II veteran.
Oh, wow.
And I said, look at this. And I said, is it true that the Jeeps bumped, you know, the LSTs into the water, you know?
Yeah.
And he said, oh, yeah. You know, he wasn't a combat soldier, but, you know, he was support services, and he was Quartermaster Corps, and so he went in days after the invasion.
To help
but
with
he
the
knows
movement,
what they were
He was very lucky because, and I was very pleased for obvious reasons that my grandfather landed on Utah Beach, not Omaha. Omaha, of course, one of the deadliest.
Right, exactly.
But it doesn't mean that people were very safe. And he said, even in the newsreel talk, he went on a series of talks himself. So that's been an inspiration to me to do that work. Is that all they were given was a camera to shoot. Newsreel cameramen were not allowed to carry guns.
Oh, wow.
And their hands were full anyway. And at one point, he actually is showing a shovel, which he said was a very useful tool. So yeah, that was a very strong influence. He went into documentary films and corporate image films and TV commercials after the war. So as a child, my mother was an actress then, became a photographer. And so he put me in some of these films as a little child. So I was around it, I guess, most of my life. And it was an influence that's what I wanted to do.
Right. In fact, to bring that up, I know I'm not touching on that much, but I was going to say your mother was an actress as well.
Yeah.
And so was she a New York actress, film actress?
Oh, yeah. My mother was on Broadway.
Oh, she's on Broadway.
Her Broadway debut was with Arthur Godfrey Marino Sullivan in a show called Never Too Late.
Wow.
She was one of the replacement Kate's, the daughter. It's about a couple that are trying to have a baby and they can't, and then their elderly or then in their 40s, their parents suddenly found that the mother was pregnant.
Oh, okay.
When the kids, and it was with Richard Mulligan, who was of Empty Nest fame.
Okay.
She played her husband, and so she did that, and then it went on tour. So she got to do that in the beginning, and she was on a soap opera for a while.
Wow.
She did a lot of commercials. So I grew up around it. It was just part of my life. And then when she divorced my father when I was very young, who was from Baltimore.
Okay.
But she remarried, and my stepfather, then to be my adopted father, was an attorney in the music industry.
Oh, wow.
And my brother's gone into that line.
Oh, interesting.
Following, not an attorney, but in the music business. So,
Okay.
again, that influence has been around me my entire life. So I guess you sort of go where you know, and the
Yeah.
people that you get to meet and the things that you do.
Sure, that's some of the attraction to film.
Absolutely. I saw my mother doing this, and I saw, people that my father was working with, musicians and some incredible performers that he was lucky enough to work with, and it was an influence. Yeah, absolutely.
But also, this is something I thought one of the most interesting little tidbits I found out about you. Is that you were in the movie Hello, Dolly.
Yeah, as a kid. We had a house in Garrison, New York, that was like a summer house. We get to go up there. And Garrison was used for Yonkers. When they had the old trains, that whole put on your Sunday clothes bit, that was a real station that was there.
Oh, wow.
And there was a gazebo and a whole downtown, and they had Van de Gelder's store. That was all in Yonkers. That was all a town called Garrison, New York. And they were using local people as extras in the movie. So it wasn't a fancy thing. I was an extra, but it's fun to leave that. The boy with the hoop. Because people say, well, what is it? Well, if you see the scene, there's this gazebo, and on the right, there's a little blonde kid with a hoop, and they're playing it. It's in the distance. It's small. It's like being an extra on Veep or any of these shows today. But back then, it's fun for a little conversation sometimes.
I mean, yeah, because otherwise we can't say, oh, did you, work with Streisand or Walter
No,
Matthau,
I mean, it wasn't anything like that.
Or Gene Kelly directed you or something?
Not specifically, no. There were assistant directors, and I don't...
Probably a second assistant or something
I was,
like
I think,
that.
7 at the time, 6 or 7.
Great. And of course, you've done a lot more since. To bring it up...
Since 1967, yeah.
I was going to say, bring it up to date closely. But didn't you say you just did something on the last season of the House of Cards?
Yeah, I've got a lot of my friends that you've had on here, like Ken Arnold and other people. They've all had their bits on House of Cards.
And now you have yours.
And now I got to have my little moment. I've actually signed a non-disclosure agreement, so I cannot talk about it.
Well, then don't talk about it. You're just going to
But I will say that this season is going to be great.
And people should
It's going to be powerful and wonderful. And I appear briefly in the first episode of the final season.
Okay.
And they maybe have cut it out, and it's going to be on the editing room floor.
So you won't be there anyway.
but because of the people that I had the scene with, I seriously doubt that's going to happen. But we shall see whenever it's really, I guess in the fall, and maybe out. So I got to play with the big boys for a little bit.
Well,
and
that's good.
It was fun. It was nice. It was an honor to get to do that.
And now in the movie Bill Tillman and the Outlaws.
Yeah, we just finished that.
When you're talking about the history of movies, you got to play William Seelig.
William Seelig, yeah, he
of
was
S&A Films.
That's him.
With Bronco Billy Anderson was the A.
Yeah.
And even to the point, besides Billy Anderson's westerns, they had Chaplin for a little while.
He did, and actually, apparently Edison was chasing a lot of these people back in those days as well because of copyright, and Seelig was very fascinated by the kinetograph and some of the technology that Edison had sort of capitalized on, and how are there ways to improve on it. And Seelig started in Chicago and made his way to Los Angeles.
Right.
And it was also thought that I'd read somewhere that in Los Angeles, a lot of if they heard that Edison's attorneys were on their way out, they would run to Mexico or something like that.
Right,
so.
Because he claimed to have a monopoly on that camera.
They supposedly did, and it was there were all sorts of crazy things in the early days that I joke that they had boxing matches were some of the first Edison films, but the film only ran so many minutes before the film ran out.
Right.
So they had pre-assigned victors in these boxing matches, and I joke in my lecture on the Queen Mary for Cunard.
Another aspect with film with you is we can say you're a filmmaker and a film producer, and you have your own, or did have your own production company.
Well, I mean, when you're an independent person and you're doing independent films, you have to have some legal entity to put the name on it. So R&M Productions was sort of a business name that I've used for some of these documentaries that I put together, independently, money raised. One called Mr. Ocean Liner with Bill Miller, a fabulous gentleman who is a vivid speaker on ocean liners. He's written over 90 books now on ocean liners. He became a very dear friend, and he saw a smaller documentary I had made and said, you know, I know this is very narcissistic of me, but I always dreamed of someone doing a documentary of my life. Would you do it? Because he had seen the other one in ships and ocean liners, which is a huge hobby of mine. Yeah. So I said, I mean, my God, Bill Miller. So ships following him around in his private life as an inner city school teacher who lived this dual life. So that was a project that I invested time and money and effort in, which was premiered on the Queen Mary 2. Actually, and it's sold on board the Cunard liners for many, many years, and it's available on Amazon. And so it's now streamable. I think you can now get it on Amazon Prime. But so that was one of my early production company names, just as anybody needs a working.
Yeah, but seeing something on YouTube also led to believe that you would do commercials for companies, you would do industrial films, all these things. Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, just like my buddy Ken Arnold does. I mean, we collaborate together many times. I mean, I love the man. He's incredibly talented, incredibly creative, and he's given me a lot of opportunity. And you got to keep trucking in some markets.
I can imagine. Yeah.
You know.
Now you've been a writer, as you've mentioned. You wrote a play. It's like what?
41 North.
41 North, 50 West. Yes.
Yeah, that's. In fact, Ken went over. I was very sick for a while, and Ken went over to Southampton for me because the play premiered there at the Sea City Museum on the 102nd anniversary of the Titanic sinking. Okay. It's based on the court hearings that took place in the United States immediately following the sinking of the ship, but some fascinating characters, and it's more the juxtaposition of events and how, like in today's news, when something is broadcast and come out, and that's what I dissected from these 1,000 some odd pages of the hearing that we paired into a play, is literally how misinformation led to so many decisions and so many misconceptions, and the humanity of it all that hasn't changed in all that time. You'll recognize characters that were very much like they are today. The person who's complaining while the ship is sinking and she's at the hearing and they're asking her about it, she's just complaining about how cold her room was and she couldn't get the purser to answer her. And the senator says, and so is that when the Titanic hit the iceberg? No, I'll get to that later. So I said to the purser, you know,
it's all about me.
Hello, there we are. So anyway, so that's the element of that play, and was very get out there and to get to the next step.
Have you written any other plays?
I have a musical called Rumpelstiltskin's Daughter that was done before that, that was produced at the Chesapeake Arts Center here.
Great.
Right near, actually, nearby, by Wayne Shipley.
Oh, hey, he directed that too.
No, Wayne didn't direct it. I directed it, but Wayne produced it.
Oh, he produced
it. And it was a huge cast of some wonderful years back, and we became dear friends, and Terry stepped into this leading role. But Wayne produced this there. It then went on, and we got it in the Edinburgh Festival in 2005, which is where I met Wayne Pryor, my gorgeous, beautiful, dear friend Rain, who is now part of our Baltimore community as well. And from there, Theater 4 in Richmond, Virginia produced it as well. So it's been done a number of times. And it's interesting because it's almost more pertinent today, the story, than it was back then. So we're looking at perhaps even reviving it. But there's a long shopping list of projects and things that, again, we have to pace ourselves.
It's a great idea, though. I mean, Rumpelstiltskin's Daughter.
Well, it was an award-winning book by Diane Stanley about sort of a what if. She never liked the fact that the Miller's daughter, who was treated so badly by this greedy, selfish, childish, officious king, that she would marry him. So she runs away with Rumpelstiltskin in this kid's version of the book. And years later, this greedy, selfish, childish king tries to get the mother back, but he finds the daughter. They've now had a daughter. And maybe does she have magic powers or not? The girl's too smart, and she sees starving people all over, and it's all about wealth and opulence and greed and control. And she says, I want to change a king and a kingdom and help these people. And she uses her intellect. And without spoiling it, but at the end of the story, she changes a king and a kingdom in this wonderful musical version with music by Tim Battle, who was with Boys Choir of Harlem.
Okay, great.
We met at a Lincoln Center Theater Directors Lab many years ago, and that's how we collaborated on this.
Terrific.
And a local actor named and musician, Jason Brown, also worked in Bill Tillman, was our music director. And
Terrific.
Added to the stories. But in the end, the king says to the woman, for all you've done, I want to make you my queen. And she says, oh, thank you, Your Majesty. That's so nice. I'm so honored, but I'd rather be Prime Minister. So it's a very savvy,
Very
female,
good.
strong female
sounds
character.
like today. It does.
Just a little bit.
It's not dated. It's not dated.
It's not dated. And that was originally written in the book in the late 90s.
Terrific.
And then we go back a number of years with that.
Way. Tony.
There you go.
No, but the other thing it said, I read, is that you've done critiques. You've done critical pieces, like, I guess, critiquing theaters. I don't know.
Oh, well, when I first...
For the Sun paper.
When I first moved to this area, and I didn't know what I was going to do, I had sort of stepped away from the business for a number of years. I met some people, and then through Patuxent Publishing for Sun writing freelance theater reviews, and that sort of... It eased me into getting back into the business, and I started meeting a lot of people that way, and I really enjoyed that writing aspect. That was early on. Again, it was a way to make some money, but it was in my profession, it was in my arts. It wasn't just finding temporary work in another non-related industry to make a living. It could be making a living more in Mid-Atlantic theater and film community.
Well, it's great because, I mean, you do have a lot of background in theater. We're not even touching the stuff you did in the West End.
I know, yeah, long ago. I know. My God, this is your life, but without all those people coming in and, you know. But yeah.
Roald Atkinson and all those people, you know.
Yeah, in the very beginning. It was in England.
Very talented man, yeah.
Rowan was a really amazing performer and a good man to work with, and I didn't know much of who he was in the very beginning when I went to England because he wasn't known as worldwide. And that was the musical Me and My Girl. I worked for a producer in the West End, and I was in my 20s. I was very young, and I had an opportunity to learn a lot and work with some really amazing people. And many of these people are dear friends to this day that I met back in that time.
I mean, he's still around. He has a new series, I think, on PBS.
Yeah.
You know, where he plays a famous Belgian, or I think, a Dutch detective.
Okay.
Yeah, I've read a few of the books, and it's a serious role.
Rowan was a very serious actor.
Mr. Bean, you know?
Yeah, well, exactly. The rubber man, rubber face, you know, kind of a thing. Yeah, I first saw him, he did The Nerd, was before he stepped in to do other things. And Mike Cochran, who was the director of Me and My Girl, had directed the Nerd back then, in the beginning.
Okay. And
then, no, I produced and directed it. And,
you did?
I co-produced it with another woman named Yvonne Sneeden. Okay. I met her at, there was a conference for near-death survivors. There's a group called the International Association of Near-Death Studies. And I found them shortly after I had a heart attack. If people don't know, I had a heart attack and I was dead for a minute and a half. And they resuscitated me. And that changed a lot of things in my life. And I wanted to meet other people and understand more about what had happened to me from somebody else's perspective, because I had a lot of questions and very few answers, as a lot of people could imagine. So I found this group, and they had a conference the year before that was in Phoenix, and I called this number. I guess they're based in the Carolinas, and I said, do you have anything? I guess it's sort of meant to be that I'm supposed to meet these people. And I went and I took a little workshop with this woman, Yvonne Sneeden, and another friend of hers, Sabine Van de Belk, who were talking about what they called the after effects of a near-death experience. It wasn't so much about what we experienced or saw or the light or any of these sort of commonalities that are so widely known today, but it was about living after the fact, that how are we different as people and how have we changed? And for many people who have survived near-death experiences, it's a very difficult journey to come back, as much as you think, well, you must be grateful that you're back. After experiencing something so intense as that, as sublime as it is for many people, it's very difficult to listen. Family members find it very hard for you to be talking about dying, to talk about being dead, talking about your feelings about it. Friends back away quite often, and it's challenging for people. There is often depression that goes along with it. Person who's gone through it, for the survivor.
Okay.
Sometimes very hard to be back in a world that seems to be so filled oftentimes by hate and judgment and persecution, and often based on religion and what you're going to go to hell, or this is what's going to happen, or people who are, as we know in our country, whatever side of the issue, you'll have viewers that will be pro it, some people will be con it, but who are trying to change laws all in the name of religion and freedom. And it's all about what happens when you're dead, really, with religion. It's where am I going to go? And what's going to happen to me? And am I going to be redeemed? And am I going to be punished for the way I lived? Or will I be punished because I did something to somebody else whose lifestyle was not? it's a viable question. It's a realistic question. Again, differing sides of the view. But when you've died and you've crossed that threshold and you've been people, I can't speak for everybody, obviously, but my experience has been most people are incredibly surprised at how non-judgmental it is, and it's nothing but light and life and love and a simplicity, but an intensity, a life force that is more intense than anything. It kind of breaks down those barriers. People question, tends to make people less religious, but maybe more spiritual, if that makes sense.
Yes, it makes sense.
You know?
Now, for you, you said it changed the way you live life, this basically second chance that you have.
I know, it's funny because I say to people quite often that because sometimes it's often a little surreal and friends joke with me, but it's like, even this, it's like, what if I really did die back then? And all of this, you, everybody, this TV show, everything is just like my figment of my, because it is surreal to say the least. Even contemplating back on it, now that I'm very solidly here and there's no question, it's still surreal to think that for
briefly, because we don't have a lot of time.
I know. But I think on one level, it is feeling more at one with everything now. It's not like I'm grateful to be alive because, oh my God, I was, people say, oh, it must have been a terrifying experience. No, it was actually quite a warming, comforting experience. Attainment and material things and wealth and fame, those are things, as you and I spoke about prior, that you just don't take with you. And it's more important what you do in your life and the mark you leave on people. I was shown during a brief period while I was gone how we all have a ripple effect. And that if somebody's not on this planet for whatever reason, and so forth now, and depression in a very serious form.
Of course.
You can change people's lives sometimes by what you give of yourself and that connection. And I feel more of a responsibility. Those are the more important things to me now. How somebody feels. If I can make somebody less afraid, if I can let somebody find a calm or a serenity in their life that they can carry with them. If I can do that through my work, through my films, through the people that I work with, they're commercial things as well, but those elements, I'm starting to give talks now on the subject matter. We actually have a screening October coming up. The date is to be set, but that's at the Columbia Arts Center in October. We're going to have a screening of my documentary Back from the Light, and we'll have a talk and audience question and answer.
With a medium?
No, that's a separate one. We have a separate talk.
You have one with the medium?
A separate one with Karen Tatro. We just did one up in Turners Falls, Massachusetts, with a large audience that came, and people want to get answers. They want to understand things. There's a curiosity about life and what happens to us and where we go. And no, we don't have all the answers, but from someone who's stepped over the threshold and other people who have, you can demystify it just a tad. There is a more, how is it going to happen? I tell you, heart attack's the way to go, because it's boom, you're here, next second you're shooting through the stars. But I mean, and I do. I'm a bit irreverent about it. If people find it offensive, Karen and I, we kind of joke the medium and the nearly dead guy.
Okay.
But the thing is, it takes on a different tone. It's part of life. It's just another part of why we're here, and it's more. What about this? And what if this happens? Once you get out in the world, you can make a decision to go left or right, answer the phone or not, as I tell people quite often. But once you're out in the world, things are going to happen. If something good is going to happen to you, it's going to happen, whether you want it to or not. And sadly, if something bad is going to happen to you, it's going to happen whether you want it to or not. So why worry about it? Live your life the best you can and make every day count. Tell the people you love them. Because that Friday I woke up, it was just like any other Friday, and I almost wasn't here at the end of the day. And you wake up in the morning. I know it sounds depressing, but really, turn it to a positive.
That's great. Because, I mean, just to think about wealth and fame doesn't really bring the happiness when just in 1 week you have Kate Spade and Anthony Bourdain both commit suicide. And these were people who had a lot of reasons.
Did you make somebody feel good today? Did you do something that let yourself feel good? Go for a walk around a lake if you can, or go sit in the sun, or read a book if that brings you joy, or go hug your child or your dog or your cat or somebody you love, or do something that fulfills you just for a little bit. Because what if this is the last moment? I want to know that I've really done something kind of nice with it. And when you live through your life under normal circumstances, you don't think of things. I've got to pay the mortgage. I've got to pay my taxes. I've got to get ahead in my career. I've got to do this. I've got to do that. Yeah, they're realistic things. I'm not saying give up on that. Right. It's a realistic thing. But that can be interrupted in a moment, and none of that would matter.
Right.
So why am I going to live every single moment of my life going, oh my God, I didn't do this, I should have done that, I have to do this, what if I don't do that? That's a complete waste of time to me. Learn to embrace that. Take a breath. Then all that other stuff, you know what? I think it becomes a little easier to deal with. And you know, you're still going to get things done. That's who we are as human beings. You know, but so that's a big change for me is my attitude towards, I want to enjoy this journey a little bit too, because this is it.
This is what you get.
That's a whole other story, but that doesn't change
Right.
your responsibilities
Right now.
Right now.
Exactly.
That's my
Well, I
feeling.
think that's great. So what we want to do before we stop,
okay,
because we could go on. And
No,
we'd
this
love
is
to
fun.
have
I
you
hope
back.
I hope this is interesting for
We'd love
everybody.
to have you. It will be.
Thank
Believe
you.
me. Look into your camera. Give people your contact information, please.
My contact information. Okay, you can find me through robertneilmarshall2@gmail.com. And there are a couple of websites out there. You can find me on IMDb. Just Google the internet and you'll find more information than probably I want to have on the internet. But I'd love to hear your stories and guide me through what happened to me and my discovery and my recovery and so forth, and another illness that happened afterwards. And so I'm putting it in book form, and my goal is to finish that by the end of the year.
Great.
So it's all there. It's got to be some editing and some cleanup. So that's my final swan song, perhaps, or not. I don't know.
But people should go read that.
When it's available, yes, it'll be on Amazon as far as I know.
Definitely,
So-
and maybe we'll have you back here.
That
Because
would
I
be
do
lovely.
a show called Books and Authors. So.
Oh, do you? Okay. Well, let me finish it first, and then we'll talk after.
Oh, very good. Well, again, thank you for stopping by.
Thank you. I appreciate it. It's
Great
wonderful.
to have you.
Thank you.
You're watching The Paul Stefan Show on TV Free Baltimore.
Hi. Hi. I'm Dawn Wells, and guess what? You are watching TV Free Baltimore.
Welcome to TV Free Baltimore's Books and Authors.
How many books have you written?
6 books altogether, one of them being a revised edition, so I don't know, I count that as a separate one.
Okay.
But 6 books covering pretty much different aspects of popular culture and entertainment.
Well, for example, what are the books
Well,
about, or the titles of the books?
They range from Best of the Britcoms, which is a celebration of British situation comedies that have aired in the U.S., to an oral history of Beatlemania called We're Going to See the Beatles, biography of comedian Ed Wynn, and my most recent one being called For the First Time on Television, which is a history of all of television's firsts. From first sitcom to first news bulletin, you name it.
That's terrific. What compelled you to write about this topic area?
I just write books about the topics that I'm interested in personally. So otherwise, I don't think I'd be able to get through all of the research and all the other work it would take. If someone had suggested a topic for me, I would really have to be interested in it myself before I devote all of that energy into writing a book about it.
You do all your own research?
Yes, I do, and I actually enjoy it. A lot of authors, I think, consider it a drudge, but I enjoy the research.
Now, do you self-publish or do you have a publisher?
I've had different publishers, depending on which book it is. And most recently, it's been Bear Manor Media, which specializes in biographies of older Hollywood celebrities and other topics related to films and television.
Any success in sales or
Some, yeah, I like to think so. I think Best of the Britcoms was very good because at the time I wrote it and published it, there wasn't an easy way to find out about British sitcoms, and I knew there were a lot of fans, and I knew it was a popular topic, but they just had no way of learning more about the programs themselves. So I took it upon myself to do the research and make a lot of overseas phone calls to the BBC and other people, and so that's how that came
I
about.
was going to say, unless really almost you'd gone over to London, it'd be hard to do
Yeah,
some
no,
research.
I wish my budget allowed for that, but I had to do everything via faxes back when faxes were
Right.
the way to do things, and and phone calls. And
All right, and you did write the book on Ed Wynn. We've talked about that a little bit, but
Yeah.
What moved you to pick him out of all the?
Well, it's funny. I didn't really set out to write a biography of him. I started to research a book that I was hoping would be a more comprehensive history of comedy in America going throughout the 20th century. But I kept seeing his name appear, whether I was reading about vaudeville or radio or TV or film. And I thought, I was vaguely aware of who he was, but I didn't know much about him. And this sort of spurred me to find out more about who he was, because he obviously had a long and successful career. So that led me into concentrating my research onto just him. I found out along the way that the history of his career really is the history of show business for the first half of the 20th century, because he had his hand in everything and was successful in everything. So I'm satisfied with the results.
Was that one of your favorite projects, or which one's the dearest and nearest to your heart?
Oh, that's hard to say.
They're all are?
Well, pretty much, yeah, because I'm a lifelong Beatles fan, so I enjoyed interviewing people who were teenagers at the time of Beatlemania. That was a thrill. The Britcom book was because I was such a fan of Britcoms anyway, and you had hundreds of hours of Britcoms on videotape, and I thought, well, maybe I can do something constructive with all of this, and that's how that sort of came about. So,
did you have a favorite Britcom that you could pick?
I have a few. I don't know if most of them aren't very well known here.
Oh, really? So
They were on
broadcast here?
they were on PBS stations, but they were scattered around the country. So it wasn't as if some of them had mass exposure. Something like Faulty Towers, most people know. But there are other shows like Allo Allo, which is my personal favorite.
I love that show.
And the British Empire is another one, which I rank those two programs above Faulty Towers, and not many people do that.
Now, is there anything that you're currently working on?
Not as we speak, because I just finished a book that was published only a few months ago, so I'm taking a little breather.
Okay.
And but my mind's always working, and I'm always thinking through ideas of what might make a good book and maybe what might not make a good book.
Now, do you make a living at this?
That's what I do,
That
yeah.
is what you do.
I wouldn't recommend it for everybody if that's what they want to do for a living, but it's sort of my passion. So,
And do you do this like convention circuit, or?
This is only my second at the Mid-Atlantic Nostalgia Convention. And
what other places do you do?
I've been to the Beatle Fest back when my Beatles book was new. That's up in North Jersey. And but I'm still pretty much a rookie at this sort of thing. So.
All right. And now, do you have contact information or website if people are interested in you or your publication?
Right. I have a website. It's GaryBerman.com, 2 R's in Gary. And my books are also available on Amazon.com. And I'm on Facebook, so I'm not too hard to find if anybody who needs to find me.
You're watching Books and Authors on TV Free Baltimore.
Hello, I'm Steve Darnall, the publisher of Nostalgia Digest, and you're watching TV Free Baltimore. Well done.
The Desposil is on my shore, Maryland, my Maryland. His torch is at thy temple door, Maryland, my Maryland. Our friends the patriotic corps that fleck the streets of Baltimore, and be the battle queen of yore, Maryland, my Maryland. Thou wilt not cower in the dust, Maryland, my
This concludes another day of live stream broadcasting from TV Free Baltimore.